Fatoumatta Bintou Al-Hadi is now officially a member of Sierra Leone Supreme Court. President Julius Maada Bio presided over her swearing-in at State House, while Asino State House correspondent Amosili reports.
Honorable Justice Fatoumatta Bintou Al-Hadi,
do hereby in the name of Allah,
do hereby in the name of Allah,
swear that I will faithfully,
swear that I will faithfully
and truly discharge the duties of the office of the Judge of the Supreme Court
discharge the duties of the office of the Judge of the Supreme Court
of the Republic of Sierra Leone,
of the Republic of Sierra Leone,
and that I will support, uphold, and maintain the Constitution of Sierra Leone as by law established.
and maintain the Constitution of Sierra Leone as by law established.
So help me Allah.
So help me Allah.
Thank you very much.
It was a solemn moment inside State House. Justice Fatoumatta Bintou Al-Hadi took the oath of office as Sierra Leone's newest Supreme Court judge. Dr. Emmanuel Gaima, Secretary to the President, led the ceremony, citing Section 1352 of the 1991 Constitution. He confirmed Parliament's unanimous approval of her appointments. Justice Al-Hadi thanked President Julius Maada Bio for the trust placed in her. She promised to serve with honesty, fairness, and full respect of the law.
It is with profound humility, honor, and pleasure that I stand here this afternoon to express my gratitude to you, Your Excellency the President, for the confidence reposed in me in nominating me for the position of Supreme Court Judge on the recommendation of the Judiciary.
The Opportunity Salon program was launched in 2022 to provide jobs for youth and persons with disability in Bo, Kenema, Butloko, and Bombalu districts. The project, which was funded by the EU and technical support from ILO, was aimed at supporting entrepreneurship, agro-processing, innovation, and legislative reforms in the corporate sector. After 4 years, various partners, including the National Youth Commission, have come together to assess progress in the implementation process. Well, our reporter Esther Nene Kamara sent in this report, read in studios by Cynthia Kamara.
Launched in 2022, the Opportunity Salon program set out to provide 4,000 decent jobs for Sierra Leoneans, which have been created, and more can still be done through the Scale Up, funded by the European Union and backed technically by the International Labour Organization. The initiative is being implemented in 3 strategic areas: entrepreneurship, agro-enterprise, and feeder road maintenance. The meeting brought together strategic implementing partners, Ministry of Trade and Industry, to revise the Cooperative Act of 1997, Sierra Leone Local Content Agency to build resilience for 21 innovative business, processing cassava and oil palm, National Youth Commission for Business Competition to tap into youth innovation on appropriate technologies, which will help farmers improve efficiency and productivity at the ILO office, Moj Farm, Aberdeen, to discuss areas to improve and roll out plans for the continuation of the project. Chief Technical Advisor, Opportunity Salon Project, Tunderia Manoto, said there are so many challenges in society, noting that they are working tirelessly to address those problems through the implementation of the project.
We want to implement on time. We want to achieve things on time. And we want to be able to facilitate that our partners are able to do what they want to do on time. So everyone, hands on deck. That's the biggest expectation.
Representative European Union Franco Mansomara said the Opportunity Salon program under the ILO was one of its jobs and growth program, and they have been doing tremendously well since the project was implemented, and that they want their partners to do the same.
We should ensure that we have a good control system in place. The control environment, that means the attitude of key stakeholders because if we have a very good attitude, impliedly it means that the people that we are working with will also place significance on the project.
Partners, National Youth Commission, Sierra Leone Local Content Agency, and the Ministry of Trade share their experiences and discuss the way forward for the completion of the project.
Our products that are made and produced locally here in Sierra Leone have the requisite value so that they cannot compete only here in Sierra Leone but the global stage. All of those key objectives set as a target for the Opportunity Salon project.
Of course, an agreement has been signed between the International Labour Organization and the Ministry of Trade that has to do with the review of the Cooperatives Act. As the Chief Technical Advisor rightly mentioned,
our strength, our loyalty, and everything that can help us to project the image of young people in areas of value chains that having to do with cassava, palm oil, and vegetables. Thank you again, Chief, for the support.
As the meeting ended, partners were taught on how to do financial and technical reporting of document, communication strategies, and data collection.
The Regional Managing Director of African Global Logistics, Captain Kokan Fabjanko, has reaffirmed the company's commitment to continue investing in Sierra Leone and the West Africa region. He was speaking at the Freetown Terminal during an inspection and experience sharing visit by high-power delegation from Liberia. Dennis Fraser has more.
In the port of Monrovia and Buchanan, Regional Managing Director of African Global Logistics, Captain Kokan Fabjanko, said after an expansion work in January 2017, the Freetown Terminal now boasts of over 35,000 container storage facility, which was a massive infrastructure development. Mr. Fabjanko emphasized the company's willingness to continue investing in Sierra Leone and also in other West African nations.
We are investing. We are going to build 300 meters of the quay. Tomorrow, we are going again to invest in Sierra Leone. It's not done. We are working with the government. There is a new project, and we are not going to stop. In case we find a common sense, understanding, partnership, and collaboration with the government of Liberia.
Speaking on their impression after the visit, members of the delegation expressed delight for the rapid transformation of the country's maritime and port facilities.
We are impressed with what AGL is doing, and we trust that the people of Sierra Leone are happy with what they are offering, and the population is benefiting. The port has a lot to offer for the population. It has the benefit of economic growth. It has the benefit of, within economic growth, you have employment, you have new skills that people learn. So these are factors that grow the economy, and we from the Liberia standpoint are looking forward to taking cue from what Sierra Leone is doing.
Out of the 350 workers plus here, almost all of them are Sierra Leonean, so it shows ownership. It shows that this is something that they have been training so that you can manage. We've been able to review the BOT, the bill, operate and train over.
Doing a comparative analysis with Sierra Leone, Guinea and Liberia in terms of volume of ships and storage facilities, senior political advisor to the president of Liberia, Mark Della Cooper, said that they will build on some of the lessons learned.
The level of investment they're making here, we want that in Liberia. And so I'm very excited to have seen this. I'm going to go back and report directly to His Excellency and give my own testimony and photos and information as to what I've seen. And I think this will be a good marriage for Liberia.
The seaports of countries serve as the gateway to their economy. Hence, their efficiency and development are essential to economic stability. SLBC, Dennis Fraser reporting.
In a significant act of humanitarian support, the Jagaban movement has extended a helping hand to victims affected by fire incidents in the Crabtown community of Aberdeen, Freetown. The organization donated the sum of 100,000 leones to assist those who lost their homes properties and businesses in the tragic event. Our reporter, Christiana Kamara, tells us more.
A month ago, a fire outbreak swept through the Crabtown community, displacing over 50 households and leaving many residents homeless and in distress. The nighttime blaze consumed not only personal belongings, but also the livelihoods of many families, reducing them into a state of uncertainty and despair. The CEO and founder of the Jagaban movement, Mohamed Amadou Kamara, commonly known as Jagaban, expressed his deep sympathy for the victims during the donation ceremony. He said the 100,000 loans was a gesture of compassion for all they have lost, noting the support was purely humanitarian. Jagaban also promised to address some of the community pressing needs by providing toilet facilities, drainage systems, and boreholes in the near future. He said the aim was to improve the living conditions of residents who are still facing the aftermath of the fire.
But I've made them a promise that I will make sure that I help them with toilet and water. Of course, we have the borehole machine. I'm going to work with the chairman and make sure that we identify, even if it's 2 locations, to make sure that we give them water and the toilet also.
Beneficiaries expressed their gratitude, describing the support from the Jagaban movement as a vital lifeline, noting that the support was the greatest help they have received since the tragic night and has given them hope to rebuild their lives.
We feel amazed because since we get this problem in our constituency, we don't cry for help to different comrades. Then some man don't cry, so they don't cry to help. But this now the big help we don't get from Comrade Jagaban. We made a pronouncement last week Friday of 100 million loans, and today you don't can fulfill promise.
Community leaders also voiced their appreciation for the assistance while highlighting ongoing challenges faced by the Crabtown area. The call for continued support from the government, the Jagaban movement, and other humanitarian organizations to address the lack of essential social amenities in their community. As the Crabtown community begins the road to recovery, the Jagaban movement's generous donation serves as an encouragement, reminding victims that they are not alone in their struggles. SLBC News are in Freetown. Christiana Kamara reporting.
The founder of an orphanage, Fatima Home, Edward Musa Nake, has appealed to relevant authorities to solve a land dispute between them and some community youths. He claimed that the situation has posed a serious threat to the safety of the children residing in the home. Aminata Fofama reports.
This orphanage, named Fatima Home, is seated on more than 5 acres of land at Squama village along the Waterloo-Masaka Highway. It houses about 70 children who were rescued from the streets. The children are provided with essential care including food, clothing, medical and education among other supports.
And don't donate this land to this park. This park they out in projects. They do something way much more important. Also, it help the government for take care of Sierra Leone and picking them. I think say this, they help us village people there. Therefore, they come and join hands together with the park for see that all this country will be a developed country. But if they go and carry there, this is like a threat to me.
The land dispute on ownership of some parts of the 5 acres of land they occupy remains a serious challenge for the home. Mr. Edward Musa Anake says the situation poses a serious threat to the peaceful environment they once had for the children and their staff.
By throwing stone, the children had to run away, the workers going to shelter. Then the police from crossing and then from Waterloo came and stopped them. That you must stop to disturb this place. And whoever tries that is going to face the force of the law. They are coming again to still send their threats to kill, to burn the place. And so if you are here, I'm appealing that the government of Sierra Leone do something.
He accuses some of the young people in the area of grabbing some portions of their land. The community is yet to comment on the issue as all parties await the relevant authorities to intervene.
In connection to the ongoing squabble between the founder of this home and some community people, however, SLBC made attempts to talk to some of those who were accused of disturbing the peace of this home. But all efforts were futile as none of them were willing to talk to SLBC to get their own side of the story. For SLBC News, Aminata Fofana.
In a bid to support quality education and uplift vulnerable children in deprived communities, a Sierra Leonean charitable organization based in the United States, Bridge to Better Life Foundation, Sierra Leone has extended general support to 4 schools in Freetown. Nandewa Thonka has more.
In a show of compassionate and commitment to education, Bridge to a Better Life Foundation Sierra Leone reached out to 4 under-resourced schools in Freetown with much needed aid ranging from food items, school supplies, clothing, and a donation of 50 bags of cement to each school for ongoing construction and renovation works. The beneficiary schools include the Milton Magai School for the Blind, Blessing Academy, Church of Christ Primary School, and Al-Sam Preparatory School. CEO and founder of Bridge to a Better Life Foundation, Joel Salifu Kanu, based in the United States, said the gesture was part of the foundation's mission to put smiles on the faces of Sierra Leone's young generation and restore hope in their lives through practical support. He said that the donation was not the first. Over the years, he has been working closely with deprived schools across the country with the aim to creating a better learning environment.
What inspired me was my humble beginning. I came from a background like this, and I was fortunate to go to America, live and work, and God blessed me, so I came back to see how I can help kids that are going through the same thing that I went through when I was here. Well, I want to say there is nothing too little to give, and we are all our brother's keeper. Classrooms like this, building like this, we will change them. So I will continue for them, and the end goal, I will work with the schools then, and with an orphanage, with a hospital, we will help more of the picking them.
Head teacher, Milton Magai School for the Blind, Sally Uture, and proprietress, Blessing Academy, Pastor Matilda Ai Bangura, said they are grateful for the donation, stating the cements are very timely, especially during this rainy season, as they work very hard to renovate their classrooms. It gives them the strength to keep pushing forward for the sake of the children.
The name of the organization clearly resonates with our motto, which says, we cannot see, but we will conquer. You know, the school for the blind, the Milton Magai School for the Blind, we want to assure you how grateful we are.
For now, this is all what I can afford. We have tried so far, myself and the parents. But so now Bridge to Better Life is coming in, we want to appreciate them. We don't have proper structure, proper building. We don't have furnitures. Yes, we are deprived. So we are happy with such kind of organization to come on our way.
After the presentations, the foundation and pupils shared a meal in a family-like atmosphere, reflecting unity, care, and compassion. Bridge to a Better Life Foundation continues to serve as a beacon of hope for many schools in Sierra Leone. As the foundation brings smiles and change to communities, their efforts are a reminder that every act of kindness goes a long way in shaping the future. SLBC News, Nandewa Togonka reporting.
The United Nations Conference on the Oceans will be held in Nice, France from 9th to 13th June 2025. It comes 10 years after COP21 and the Paris Agreement, which established a binding global framework to limit climate change. The Nice Ocean Agreements form an international pact for the conservation and sustainable use of the ocean, fully in line with the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the United Nations in 2015. When it comes to governance, the agreement under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction is essential. The high seas, which represents more than 60% of the ocean, are currently the only area not governed by international law. Sierra Leone can ratify the BBNG agreement before June 9th, and France will be welcoming the Sierra Leonean delegation because of their commitment to protect the ocean and celebrate the entry into force of the BBNG agreement. The lack of surveillance and common rules is causing a real social and environmental disaster, with massive hydrocarbon and plastic pollution, illegal and unregulated fishing techniques, and the capture of protected mammals. To end this legal vacuum, the BBNG agreement needs to be ratified by 60 countries so as to come into force. Now, the Sierra Leone Standards Bureau has joined the global community in commemorating World Meteorology or Measurement Day under the theme Measurement for All Times, for All People. This year's celebration marks a significant milestone of 150 years since the signing of the Metric Convention in Paris. This historic treaty laid the foundation for international cooperation in measurement standards. Here is the report.
The biggest highlight of the commemoration ceremony of World Meteorology Day was the announcement that effective May 21st, 2025, metric cups will be enforced in all markets across the country. The move is aimed at promoting fairness and transparency in trade and consumer transaction. Although this new regulation is designed to ensure consistency in the measurement, it will affect various market vendors. Yet, it is seen as the best method required to adopt standardized measuring tools in line with international best practices. The Sierra Leone Standards Bureau Executive Director, Dr. John Paul Kaisam, spoke about the critical role of measurement in national development, noting that measurement is the bedrock for fairness and quality in every society.
Our path has been one of resilience. We have confronted infrastructural gaps, navigated resources constraints, and rallied stakeholders to organize that measurement. It's not a luxury, but a bright right of development. Yet with an unwavering resolve, we have turned challenges into stepping stones.
Meanwhile, UNIDO country representative Mariatu Soare described meteorology, which is the science of measurement, as a universal language of trust and a tool for empowerment, noting that the day was not only a celebration of standardization, but a reaffirmation of their commitment to the principles of accurate measurement.
And as UNIDO, we want to use this day to reaffirm our commitment to meteorology, the science of measurements, the invisible engine behind the industrial growth, innovation, fair trade, and equality of life. Meteorology is the constant guardian of progress. National and international trade increasingly require a demonstrated conformity to written standards and specification and mutual recognition of measurement and tests.
Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, Madam Fatmata Kamara, commended the strides made by the Standards Bureau and reaffirmed the government's commitment to modernizing its institutions. She said government was transforming the Sierra Leone Standards Bureau and upholding a robust measurement system.
Measurements for all people. And picture this. Even since utero, when we were inside the womb of our mothers, the babies go through measurements, right? Otherwise, if there is something that the doctor detects that the size of this fetus is too small or too big, it tells us that what? There is a pending problem. So this tells you the importance of measurement.
World Meteorology Day serves as a global reminder of the importance of measurement in every aspect of life, from health and safety to climate change and international trade. For SLBC News, Esther Suzanette Bassi reporting.
It has been 40 years for the Freetown Players, one of Freetown's most outstanding theatre groups. The group rose to fame in the 1980s, entertaining audiences and succeeded in expanding the role of theatre from just entertainment to an effective tool for information and education. Christina Kamara has more.
The celebration held at the National Peace Museum brought together artists, journalists, and cultural fans to reflect on 4 decades of impactful performances and social advocacy. Founded in 1985, the Freetown Players have been instrumental in using theatre as a medium for education, awareness, and community engagement. According to the founder of Freetown Players, Charlie Amfna, their goal is to not only celebrate their past, but also to inspire the youth to come on board in promoting cultural expression and social change. He said they wanted them to understand the power of performing arts in addressing social issues of fostering unity within their communities.
As a performance group, first of all, what we set up for, as I say, for raise the level of theatre in this country. First thing, I be just amateur. Omangu sit down, they look one play, they laugh, they do all things done. But we come in 1985 for reform that function. We try for now to introduce theatre as a tool for information, for communication, for education, sensitization, when a new one comes around the world time.
The event featured a series of local songs and performance that highlighted the group's journey. The audience was treated to a lively display of talent in bridging the gap between generations. A young performer, Fatou Sissé, said being a member of the Freetown Players means a lot to her, noting it is amazing to see how theatre can make a difference and bring people together through edutainment, sensitization and performance in the form of drama, songs and traditional dance.
The benefits were possible get for joining Freetown Players and learn history then you were able to know like the difference within from how we country behave before and how we did now. They see a lot of changes to happen and we're putting them there where we live for bring back where we'll actually help we as a nation.
The anniversary celebration included workshops aimed at educating young artists about the importance of cultural expression and the role of theatre in social change. The Freetown Players are committed to empowering the next generation of performers and ensuring that their message continues to resonate. SLBC News in Freetown, Christiana Kamara reporting.
Well, you're watching News are coming to you live from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation on Channel 31. We continue with more stories. The Legal Aid Board has celebrated its 10th anniversary with a series of activities, including a football gala that also featured the SLBC. In 10 years, the board's first and current executive director, Fatmata Clary Carlton Hansel, says the institution has made a lot of achievements and also outlined a number of challenges. She was on our Good Morning Sierra Leone show and spoke more to my colleagues, Emmanuel Samura and Esther Sako.
We thank God. It has not been easy. It's a roller coaster. Because to pick an organization just from Parliament, they act as it is on a piece of paper, and to give flesh and blood to it, and to put it nationwide, and for it to be a household name, I am humbled. I've given legal aid to over 2 million Sierra Leoneans, and that is record number. We have won dozens of awards. We're in all districts. We track the Black Maria. We help with the high courts, and we do a lot of civil matters for women and children. At least now, even in the districts and in some of the chiefdoms, women have somewhere where they can go especially when they suffer issues with their husbands or their relatives, or children have somewhere to go. And so it's been good that we went to Parliament last week, and it was heartening to hear parliamentarians say in their constituencies, people don't even now take witch gun, juju, sasa, they go to legal aid board offices. And the essence of the legal aid is, it's a beautiful act which has been enacted by a lot of countries around the world, including Sierra Leone. It gives legal education, legal representation, it solves community level problems, it looks at issues from the family to the home, to the community, to the courts. So we're in the local courts, we're in the general courts, we're in the high courts, we're in the magistrates courts. And it's been an opportunity because Sierra Leone enacted it after the TRC report. When the special court came and the TRC, the people who appeared said a lot of people took up arms because there was no justice. They had nobody who would represent them, they had no institution they could go complain to. So it was enacted in 2015, and this time we are 10 years. And in 10 years, we've been invited by the General Assembly of the United Nations, only supporting the President, to go and address at a side meeting to explain to members in the General Assembly how Sierra Leone did it, because it's a fragile state. Also, the World Bank has invited us in Washington at the global meeting, and we chaired 2 sessions. And in that meeting, they published a study done on Sierra Leone Legal Aid Board as one of the most cost-effective, efficient schemes in the world. Okay. So we are there in the communities for people men who don't provide maintenance, man they need a bunch of money, people they only take care of woman self with their involvement, property issues, somebody dies, people are trying to take the property from the rightful owner, and also in the courts, those who are doing the serious crimes like robbery with aggravation, murder, treason, all these things. We're working with the army, we did the court martial, it's part of the representation, we even got somebody to be discharged from that trial. We are also in the local courts.
Well, she's Fatmata Clary Carlton-Hansels, Executive Director of Legal Aid Board. As a way to complement government's agenda of youth empowerment, the Children's Advocacy Forum, CAF Sierra Leone, in partnership with the Center for Accountability and Sustainable Empowerment, KSALON, has trained over 200 youth in the Western Area Urban on leadership and entrepreneurship. The exclusive training, known as the Boot Camp, spanned for 4 days at the Wazar community and was part of the Social Equity Program funded by Zurich Foundation for the so-called undeserved youth across the country. Zoe Kamara has the details.
The 4-day training or boot camp focused on entrepreneurship, leadership, innovation, and mental well-being skills for 250 young people in the Western Area Urban. The exercise emphasized the basics of starting and running a business. The participants sounded both determined and optimistic about the prospects of being able to start and run their own businesses.
As for me, I want to be a seamstress. Now I'm doing currently. I want to learn more ideas how to start my own business, because I want to be a seamstress, but I don't know how to start my own business.
And when I follow the theme of the program, make me more interesting than it was. It's all about entrepreneurship, and it's very important for young people coming up, because it's more about business skills, strategy, how to go about your business. It helps you to have the basic idea, even if you want to start a business, where should you start and where should you end, and how to talk to customers, business skills. Even if you want to open a shop in this community, you must know the wants of the people before opening a shop. I will not just come and say I'm going to open a salon when there are so many salons around the community.
For me to learn more about leadership, because business is also about leadership. If me, the CEO, I don't have any leadership quality, it will affect my business also.
The project will jointly be implemented by the Children Advocacy Forum, CAF Sierra Leone, and the Center for Accountability and Sustainable Empowerment, Case Salon, in collaboration with the Junior Achievement Africa, with funding from the Zurich Foundation. The director of CAF, Abdul Soare, said the participants were drawn from different communities in the Western Area urban after going through a rigorous exercise that involved market women and community stakeholders, adding that a greater number of them was drawn from Douazak as it is the direct beneficiary of the projects and implementation area.
For Freetown, we are targeting up to 1,000. We are not the only collaborators, or we are not the only implementing partners with Case Salon. For Freetown, we have 4 organizations that are partnering with Case Salon.
The initiative aimed to train 3,000 youth across the country in entrepreneurship and adolescence. Executive Director of Case Salon, Mariama Kunate, said the intervention was designed for young school leavers, university students, and unemployed graduates to equip them with entrepreneurial skills and to start and run their own businesses, as well as make them competitive job seekers. After all the trainings or boot camps in the targeted districts, including Makeni and Bo, Madam Kunate said they would also provide business capital to the group or groups that come up with the best business idea and an opportunity to represent Sierra Leone abroad.
The first selection of 10 group idea, we actually give them $500 each group for their efforts. So out of the 10 group, the first winner, we end up getting $3,000, the second $2,000, the third $1,000. So when you are fortunate to at least be chosen from Sierra Leone to represent us out there, when you get there, if you are the winner, your group will win $5,000.
This initiative is part of a continent-wide commitment to social equity, with the primary goal of training young Sierra Leoneans between the ages of 16 to 25 to thrive as both innovative job creators and highly competitive job seekers. Sui Kamara, SLBC News, Freetown.
The Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Communications, Innovation and Technology, Stephen Singh Kamanda, has said that the computer system framework for public digital services was key in shaping effective government strategies. It was also meant to break down the walls that separate public institutions through a connected government that provides better services. And Ms. Fraser witnessed the final validation feasibility study and the framework at the New Brookfields Hotel in Freetown.
I want to acknowledge first that this document should not just be for admiration purpose, but a foundation to act on.
Speaking on the theme, Unified Systems for Efficient Public Service, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Communications, Technology and Innovation, Stephen Singh Kamanda, said the country will leverage on modern technology in order to attain the level of digital upgrading it desires. He said that the validation process also presented a comprehensive roadmap on how government will work together to implement the study findings.
This report is not just about technology. It is about people. It is about ensuring that the citizen does not have to repeat the same information at every moment, at every government office. It is about allowing our institutions, whether in health, education, registration of finance, to collaborate, coordinate, and deliver with greater speed, transparency, and impact.
According to the Chief Director, Mohamed Jallo, the vision was deep-rooted in a seamless system in which information could be collected once but could be used in any part of the country. He went on that through such systems, vital information could be made visible to the states for enhanced service delivery.
Let me illustrate this with a practical example. A national ID system that is interoperable with the health, education and civil registration system means a child born in any part of the country is immediately visible to the state, enabling automatic enrollment in school, health coverage, future social protection programs, creating a digital.
Well, it's now time for a segment beginning with entertainment news.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Entertainment News with me, Abdul Mansari. In this edition of Entertainment News, Jala University hosts Odis the Gode Show on campus, and Rihanna and A$AP Rocky graces Cannes Film Festival. Now, Jala University, one of Sierra Leone's most renowned tertiary institutions, has hosted a student Odis the Gode Show on campus. The show, which was seen as hilarious, brought more cordiality between students and lecturers on campus. A lot of students participated and dressed in their Odis fashion costumes and danced tirelessly to the sweet sounds of olden days songs. The atmosphere was spiritual and entertaining, most of all, unified. Wow, that was indeed enjoyable. And finally, Rihanna and A$AP Rocky, one of America's most popular artists and couple, made their grand arrival at the Cannes Film Festival on the 19th May 2025. The rapper first walked the red carpet alone with the rest of the movie's cast, and then circled back to pick up his partner, who showed her growing baby bump in a curvy, hanging sky blue gown. Rihanna was on hand to support A$AP, who stars in the new Spike Lee film, Highest to Lowest. And that was indeed a stunning fashion entrance the couple displayed at the festival. We wish them all the best. Well, that's all we have in this edition of Entertainment News. And now, being your presenter, Abdul Mansari. Bye-bye.
Many thanks to our entertainment desk. We're now for our final segment. Let's join our sports desk.
It's Sports Update on the News with me, Mohamed Lamintui. In this edition of the update, we turn our attention to youth talent development as Slafa Molai Boué Kama speaks to Francis Bernard on the nurturing youth talent development.
As the scouts for the Sierra Leone national team, the Under-20 Nations Cup has just ended, and Sierra Leone did their best to get to the quarterfinals, but could not go beyond that stage. You have been all over the place scouting for players to get them involved into this tournament. What's your take so far on the overall tournament?
To be honest, for the first time in taking part in those type of big youth tournament, I think we did well. It's just that we're supposed to do more. We could have done better. Well, unfortunately, we lack one or two things that led us in that situation. But we could have done better. We did well, but we could have done better.
Okay, so we are going to talk about what could have been done to get Sierra Leone into the next stage. But first, let's talk about a general overview of the performance of the players that participated in this tournament. For example, you have Momo Kamara, we have the goalkeeper who also was a star in this whole tournament, and you have other key players. You even brought in the player from Arsenal and other players. So let's talk about a general overview of the performance of the players.
I will start with Momo. with that performance of Momo, for me, is not a surprise, because if you look at Momo's history for the last 2 years, he has been in Europe, in Portugal, and developed there as a player. So, unfortunately, he was back in Sierra Leone. He was there for some months, and was the last month or so, I heard that he's going to a club called Minnesota in USA. But you can see that that time that he has spent in Europe helped him a lot to develop as a player.
And now, of course, we draw our attention to the international scene as head coach under 20 Mohamed Lamin Camara talks to SLBC on recent development in the international scene.
Yes, one good lesson we learned is that you need to prepare early if you want to do well in the competition. And the other thing that we learned in the tournament is you should not be okay with any results, because every game is equally important as the past.
What can you say about the performance of Mohamed Lamin Camara, the top goal scorer in the competition?
The Momo's performance is just unimaginable, just so fantastic, and it means well for him and for us as a nation, because for the first time we've got somebody who produces a boy that can compete for top trophy here in the continent, and again finding himself in the best 11 of the tournament. I think that's good for him, and it's also good for us.
How about the goalkeeper Mamadou Jallo, the man who kept the goal?
Yeah, Mamadou is just exceptional. You can see that his goal is way far beyond our level. You can see. When I say our level is 20 level, it should be for me. It should be in the based on his output, not only in the tournament, but I think for some fellow I've seen him before this time, deserves to exactly.
Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of The Update. Thank you very much for joining me. I've been your presenter, Mohamed Lamin Touye, and goodbye.
Many thanks to our Sports Desk for that update. Now to end the news, the main points again. Stakeholders have assessed progress in the implementation of Opportunity Salon program. The project, which was funded by the EU and technical support from ILO, was aimed at supporting entrepreneurship, agro-processing, innovation and legislative reforms in the corporate sector. As part of its commitment to promoting education in the country, the United States Embassy in Sierra Leone has undertaken its first ever Education USA College Fair, courtesy of the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. The Education Fair was to guide pupils who have ambition to study in America. And Jagaban movement has supported fire victims at Captain community with 100,000 loans. Well, that's how we wrap up this morning edition of News Hour from the SLBC. I am Esther Susanette Bassi. Thanks for watching. Up next is our Good Morning Sierra Leone program. Continue to watch.
Discover Sierra Leone, a hidden gem of West Africa, where the radiance of life danced in harmony with the beauty of nature.
Feel the heartbeat of our culture in every beat of the drum, in every step of the dance.
Experience the tranquility of our shores, where each sunrise brings new stories and endless possibilities.
Immerse yourself in the vibrant tapestry of our daily life, where every color tells a tale and every face a friend.
Come, be enchanted by the sights and sounds of Sierra Leone.
A place where your adventure awaits.
And memories are made.
sweet without that thing what we call love. Now that make
Love Factor na a very good program where any big person can look and enjoy.
Now the kind program where you for spend time for watch. Now the kind program where you for spend time for sit down for look.
And this program it made around land for and I wonder you save life.
The Love Factor show is about family, love, counseling,
relationship. So we dey build and maintain relationship. This na program so we dey counsel you for let you know how for dey with your partner, let you know how for settle dispute between you and your heart to heart.
Well, you don't hear it for yourself. Join the Love Factor team
every Sunday, 10 p.m.
for help make we all enjoy love and peace.
Broadcasting now, as you are feeling free town anywhere. Welcome to your breakfast program, Good Morning Sierra Leone, reaching live on the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation television on Channel 31 and across our social media streaming platforms. And today happens to be Thursday, 22nd May 2025. Remember, this program starts your day with analysis and diverse interviews on news and current affairs happenings in the country. I'm your presenter, Dennis Fraser. Our quote of the day is from a Russian writer, Nikolai Ngo, and it says, "It's no use to blame the looking glass if your face look away." That's certainly food for thought. And of course, it's never the problem of the looking glass, but perhaps the problem of course, the very person looking into that looking glass and to behold your look, and you need to put up some kind of adjustment to ensure you look well, splendid. Not only in your eyes, but in the eyes of others. Coming up in the program, into this menu, government of Sierra Leone opens MPOX Statement Center as cases rise. Chairman of non-state actors on public funds and service delivery speaks on the SLBC staff welfare issues and the role of Board of Trustees. And also on the program, as Africans gear up to observe Africa Liberation Day, Sierra Leoneans call for a review of the Mines and Minerals Act, making provision for citizens to own mining companies. But these issues are going to be dealt with in the next hour on the program. This is Good Morning Sierra Leone. It's a pleasure indeed having you with us this morning. Also be reminded that you can also be part of the program by sending your thoughts, comments or suggestions, even questions on the issues being discussed, and we'll gladly read that out to our esteemed guests for them to respond. You can do so by the numbers displayed on the screen or on our social media streaming platforms. Okay, it's now time for us to usher in our guest, and for that, the government of Sierra Leone is shifting its MPOX response strategy from home-based care to facility-based treatment, following a significant increase in cases as of May 17 this year. The National Public Health Agency reported 130 new infections, bringing the total number of cumulative MPOX cases across all the states to 2,559. Higher cases numbers have been observed in the urban and rural western area of Freetown and in Bombali districts. Now, in response to the escalating outbreak, the National Public Health Agency today inspected the newly established MPOX Treatment Center at the police training school in Hastings, where for more we have the operations lead on MPOX response, Dr. Mustafa Jallo. Good morning, Doctor, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, sir.
So take us along. What's going to be, of course, the assessment visit today? What are you really going to be inspecting or looking out for? If you must tell our esteemed viewers.
Yeah. Once more, good morning again. Thank you very much for that question. So it's not just about assessment. As a country or as an agency responsible for managing outbreaks and emergencies in the country, the leadership of the NPHA and the Minister of Health thought it fit that we need to change, scale up our response strategy. So remember, we had our first case in January, 10th of January 2025. Between that period, towards April ending, we were at level 1 response. So when we look at our data, we realize that we need to escalate more and more, meaning we move from level 1 to level 2 response. Being in level 2 response means we have to put more resources across board, technical resources, material resources, and personnel also, to ensure that we are ahead of the virus. But remember, we did most of these things in our phase 1 response. We established treatment centers. We also had heightened our surveillance system in country to ensure that we are able to detect and pick up cases as early as possible. And also we engage community, we intensify our risk communication and community engagement, across the country. Of course, I said this is not an exception. We utilize this platform to create awareness, around mpox. However, along the line, investigation system, our surveillance system had some challenge, because some people, I may say, we are not adhering to basic guidelines that we're providing to them. The idea of home-based care and facility care has been practiced in other countries in responding to mpox outbreak. So we instituted the same strategy in country to see that we care for patients at home, ensuring that we have a team that visit them regularly so that they can monitor them on the situation, their clinical situation, and also how the preventive measures within their communities. But some people, as I said earlier, we are not adhering to some of these, basic guidelines that we are providing for them. So that made the response challenging a bit. And also we had challenges with some people even giving us their correct name, their name in fact, to start with. They were not giving us their right names.
Was it affected persons?
Yes, wrong telephone number, wrong addresses. So all this led to, making the investigation very challenging from our side as responders. So I've been looking at our data and the dynamics of the transmission again. We said, that is why we changed from this home-based care to facility-based care. And today we've established treatment centers across the country, and one of them is the one we are talking about now. That's the PTS. You remember PTS was utilized during Ebola as one of our treatment centers. COVID also it was utilized, and for this same purpose again, we are going to utilize that. It's no longer assessment. The assessment has been done long since. We've renovated the place again. We've started admitting cases in that place now. So currently, as I speak to you, we are taking our cases, all confirmed cases now, to PTS, which is a 400 bed capacity actually.
Sorry, just before you delve into that, Dr. Jallo, please, I'm also moved to really ask you the question, because now that we have a rise in the cases of mpox across the country, what level of response are we in?
I said earlier, it's level 2 response. We started with level 1 response. Now we're in level 2 response, and this is informed by science. It's not me sitting here as a operations lead that will just wake up one morning and say, we are now level 2 response. We work with our international partners, WHO, US CDC, UNICEF, and other health partners globally to look at our data and the transmission dynamics, and resources available to see how we respond to the outbreak. That's how we escalate response outbreak. You cannot just say, just wake up in the morning and say, this is level 2, this is level 3, this. No. It's guided by science, by data we generate, globally.
So what other mechanism do we have at our disposal to really contain the virus?
Yes, as I said, we've scaled up across our technical areas. In terms of surveillance, we've pulled out more human resources. That's why the escalation comes about, the level of response. If you're using 10 men to respond today, in another level, you have to increase that number of human resources. So we've increased our surveillance investigators. We've increased our contact tracers. We've increased our contact monitors across levels. So these ones are deployed, and more are going to be deployed. In terms of risk communication and community engagement, we've intensified also efforts to ensure that we create awareness across the country. We mobilize more social mobilizers in communities, engage communities. Remember, outbreaks start in community and they also last in community. So we want to see a community-led approach in responding to this outbreak, as we've been doing before. Communities have to take ownership, have to take responsibility of the outbreak. Remember, if someone tells me that I'm living in Waterloo, how can I trace that person? So it's only with the community people that can search house to house in their community and try to know if ever they have any positive case in their community. Some people will give us address and tell us I live in Lumley. Which part of Lumley? They are not really willing to disclose. What's your address? What street are you? So those were the challenges. So now we want to use them, work closely with the communities to ensure that they support this response in case investigation, community awareness, and also referring cases to the nearest health facility.
All right, Dr. Jalo, just before moving to another issue, you know, why all this is very much important to really be having a discussion around is the fact that, you know, a lot of people are really seeing that this is not the first time for Sierra Leone to be responding to public health emergencies, and so we should have moved past, you know, some of these petty things that some people might want to see them as, because it is not new that Sierra Leoneans, the rate of denial among certain members of the public, sometimes some people live in we have the affluence to say this doesn't even exist, it's just money making. The other day we had the privilege to host the public education lead, our Thomas was also talking about the challenge of having members of the public to really adhere to some of the preventive measures they have been giving, because there's the rate of denial among them. So what do you have to say around this?
You know, just as you said, denial in outbreak response is in almost every outbreak we see this happening. You know, started with remember in 2012 when we had a cholera outbreak,
yes,
Ebola outbreak, COVID-19 outbreak. Denial is there, but that is why we continue educating the people, create awareness. The idea of money making, of course, you and I know. No one of us want to see people die of this disease. We cannot. How can we say as responders say we want to make money from responding? We know the socio-economic impact it has on our country. It will affect my salaries. It will affect your salary and everyone's salary, and it also creates unemployment for other people. You know, nobody wants to see that. We as a responsible agency, we are established to ensure that we manage these outbreaks and emergencies for this country.
Okay.
You know, so in any way we can, I think it's not the best way for us to say we are making money out of outbreak. In fact, it destroys our systems rather than making money for our people or for ourselves. You know, so, but we will continue to engage people, continue to educate people on some of these things. You know, however, there are a couple of individuals in country that actually from the beginning they understand the dynamics of the outbreak. It's not only Mpox is not only in Sierra Leone.
Yes,
it's almost. We had an outbreak in 2022-2023 globally. Almost major countries in the world, even in South, you know, advanced countries were affected. You know, so this is not new. Mpox is not new, and in fact we've been recording Mpox cases before this general outbreak. It's one of our priority diseases. It's an epidemic-prone disease. So these are some of the diseases, one of the diseases we surveillance on daily basis.
And then you continue to explain more on your response mechanism, and of course now that we have treatment centers scattered about the country, what you're going to be responding to is the operations lead for Mpox response in the Ministry of Health. Dr. Jalo talking to us there. We move now to another issue, and this has to do with, of course, our true identity as Africans, and this is very much of interest to me. African Day, formerly African Freedom Day and African Liberation Day, is the annual commemoration of the foundation of the Organization of African Unity, which is on 25th May, which happens to be my birthday, but not so much on the day for my birthday, but in 1963. It is celebrated in various countries on the African continent as well as around the world. The organization was replaced by African Union on 9th July 2002, but the holiday continues to be celebrated on 25th May each year. African Liberation Day is to appreciate the achievement of people of Africa and to celebrate African unity. It is an opportunity to highlight the cultural and economic potential as well as making the progress made by African nations. We're in the studio to delve more on this discussion. We have the founder of Project 1808, Professor Njai, beg your pardon, who is also from the Pan-African Coalition of Sierra Leone. Good morning, Prof. Always a pleasure having you in the studio.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
How is this year's celebration going to be different?
Well, we have a Pan-African Coalition that has been in existence in Sierra Leone for a very long time, and this Pan-African Coalition led by PANAFU Sierra Leone has been involved in Africa Day Liberation celebrations for many years. So this year we actually holding the celebration at the Ebenezer Church in Circular Road on Saturday, and then followed by also we'll have Zoom live discussions on Monday. Those Zoom links will be shared to members of the public as well, where we are bringing in Pan-Africanists from around Africa to kind of discuss some of the issues around Pan-Africanism, and in different sectors, different fields, different perspectives. Some are looking at youth perspective, some are looking at even how do we use things like community restoration, environmental approaches in terms of building community resilience. And so some are looking at the aspects of climate change and Pan-Africanism. So we'll have those sort of Zoom discussions happening. But the celebrations in Freetown will be at the Ebenezer Church.
Okay.
And under the theme, Revolutionary Pan-Africanism, Mass or Solidarity Beyond Borders, Mass Organization for African Unity.
Very good. Just before delving into that, Prof, please permit me to ask you, since 1963, when this was established, to date, how much do you think that Africans have been liberated, whether mentally, economically, politically, socially, or whatever?
So we still believe that liberation, total liberation, is still missing from us in Africa.
Talk to us about it.
Yes, and so someone like Amilcar Cabral put forward the idea of total liberation. That total liberation is not just having political independence.
Okay.
Total liberation is about having total independence in terms of economically, politically, and culturally. And one of the problems we've had in Africa is that even though we have quote and unquote some form of political independence, economic independence, economic dependency is all over. We're economically dependent, mentally dependent. We're also dependent on everything possible, whether it is food, dependency, whether it is even intellectual dependency, all of our ideas. And this is one of our biggest challenge in Africa. All of our ideas that we use for either social or political organization, our education is largely dependent on outsiders, on the West. When it comes to our politics, we go to Western models. When it comes to our economics, we go to Western models. When it comes, we are dependent in everything. And somehow, if you are dependent in your mental infrastructure for ideas, you are dependent on your food infrastructure, your stomach is dependent on other people, you will be willingly or unwillingly controlled. This is what we are seeing now with Trump coming into power, freezing aid, because he thinks that's a way he can punish us. Because we've been dependent on everything. Even the most little thing that we need to do, we are dependent on aid that is coming. Sometimes we don't even need it, but we are dependent on it because mentally we've made up our minds that we cannot do anything for ourselves. And then, and so this also has continued over the years because also of us, the African elites. The African elites, whether you agree, whether you accept it, whether you believe it, whether you realize it, or whether you use some form of self-righteousness to kind of defend it, the African elite is an agent of neocolonialism.
Well, how much, talking about this dependency syndrome, how much of intellectual dependency do you think we've had over the years, to really see that we have now had that Africanness within us,
in terms of our cultural behavior, in terms of how we interact with one another, in terms of how we have that awareness to know that we are true Africans from African soil.
We are so dependent. In fact, I will say that this has been one of our major crises. You don't find this in many parts of the world. India, they will still use some of their Indian systems, whether or not, and if they still work with their Hindu systems and some of their Indian systems. The Chinese are still operating within a milieu of a blend of some of their Chinese and then bringing in some of the West. The Japanese, after the Meiji Restoration, says we can use Western technology, but with Japanese spirit, right? And then you look at all other countries.
And China is also doing the same.
China is doing the same. You know, whereas for us, it has become a cultural erosion. And it starts from our schools. It's starting from our schools. We are not, our languages are vernacular in our schools. You know, we are not bringing in any indigenous knowledge or indigenous science into our thinking. We are not domesticating modernization. If you go, China will come and build a building in Sierra Leone, but you will see the Chinese architecture. Their culture will be imprinted in it. They will show you that they will build this building here, but they will show you that it is China. Yes. So the Japanese the same. When you go to Europe, the same. Europe, England, that we actually emulate. England is still a traditional culture with the monarchy, the king. You know that whether you have 10, 15 prime ministers, the likes of Boris Johnson can come, other prime ministers can come, they can mess up, but the English people know who has the power. That's the monarchy. Spain is a monarchy. Belgium is a monarchy. Luxembourg is a monarchy. In Africa, we are the only ones where we are waiting for other people to come teach us how to rule ourselves. You can teach people how to fish. You can teach people how to read or write. But to rule themselves, that they must decide among themselves.
All right, let's
that's we are not doing.
Let's digress a little bit from talking about the global pandemic in terms of our challenges. Let's come to a domestic challenge currently we now facing. For example, that of us here in Sierra Leone, we now have the Mpox crisis. That is, we won't say ravaging the nation, but the escalation of cases speaks volume. What do you think, using the Mbuktu paradigm, that I mean, you have sophisticated idea around health mechanisms and of course paradigms that should be put in place. What do you have to say around this?
So you see, we are coming back to this. Africa is we geographically, as a result of our geography, it's not because we are poor or we are cursed, but geography is part of the reason why we have the malarias, the Mpox, the Ebola, and all those, because they thrive in the tropics and we are right here by the equator. So it's a consequence of geography. But in that geography also, humans are to Africa, right? Humans are the only species that have their origin in Africa, the only animal species that actually belongs to Africa. So humans evolved in Africa for so long before they even moved out of Africa. The diseases we have today, the viruses and all that, co-evolve with humans. So it means that in the period of evolution of our people, there has been some knowledge gained in terms of how to deal and encounter with some of these diseases. What happened to us, and one of our big challenges now, is how do we bring some of our indigenous knowledge into front? That's what we, in terms of an ideology, how do we bring it to front so we can actually also utilize it along with modern interventions, right? The challenge we have is that we have a disconnect sometimes, right, between the modern interventions and interventions that we have traditionally, right? So then many of us are trained in school. We are trained in public health, we are trained in epidemiology, we are trained in disease investigations, we are trained so much, but we lack the cultural and the anthropological understanding. And so sometimes, because we have not brought that into the fore, we are so much more challenged with sustainable ways, because the methods we have are largely dependent on huge funding that comes from outside. The innovative, low-scale, sustainable methods that our people have utilized, those have been killed.
Again, why that is very much important, Prof. The other day, the Minister of Health was in Parliament to answer to some questions regarding the escalation in cases of the mpox disease in the country. He also made mention of funding gaps responding to this particular national health crisis. Do you think that, suggesting innovative ways, do you think that we have the potential to domestic revenue mobilization to really respond to this particular disease?
Well, think about Ebola, right? Ebola came to Sierra Leone.
Because even the vaccines, they are from our foreign partners.
That's right, exactly. So this is really why, again, when we talk about the greater picture of Africa Liberation Day, we are thinking about, like I advise Africa CDC, and I'm part of the Africa CDC Scientific Steering Committee. And we have developed now, in fact, that's why I'm rushing now, because we are trying to do the research prioritization for Sierra Leone, and we're doing this in other African countries. What we are trying to now look at is how can Africa develop its own research and development. From research through pipeline of development and manufacturing. Because when COVID came, we didn't have any vaccines. Currently, mpox, we have to beg here, beg here, beg here, beg here, beg here, and beg. Who donates here? 20,000. Who gives us 10? Who gives us this?
Those vaccines comes, their shelf lives are
and they almost expired, just like some of the COVID vaccines. So how do Africa, on a greater picture beyond what is happening now in Sierra Leone?
Do you think we lack the manpower to really do that?
We don't. We have the capacity. We have great African scientists. We have strong African researchers. We have strong African institutions. The missing ingredient becomes the leadership. The leadership to develop the ideology, the policy, and the belief. Cuba, I'll give an example. Cuba, Sierra Leone can buy Cuba 1 million times and give it change again. Yes, Cuba has nothing. Small island, nothing. But what does Cuba have? Sitting next to America. America will have crushed Cuba. For over 50, now 60 years, America has sanctions on Cuba. But when Fidel Castro came, America wanted to strangle Cuba. But Che Guevara developed an ideology along with Fidel Castro on political and economic organization of Cuba. That is why COVID-19 comes. Cuba develops a vaccine. Small country develops a vaccine. Cuba, sitting next to America, with no resources, very poor, has the best public health system in the world.
Wow.
So this is to tell you that sometimes it's not about the money or the resources you have. It's about really, if you have the right leadership and you have the right ideology and you have the right mindset, you can begin to do things and organize.
Quickly before we go, Prof, the celebration on Sunday at
yes, on Saturday.
On Saturday.
On Saturday it starts at 3 p.m. at the Ebenezer Church in Circular Road, and then on Monday we'll have online virtual celebrations that will happen with other Pan-Africanists around Africa and globally, and we'll have speakers from Sierra Leone, and also even the uncle of the current president of Senegal will be one of our keynote speakers on our online.
Finally, as you will be using that to celebrate Africanism, and of course patriot of Africa, I know you will not do that without mentioning, of course, the proud son of the Burkinabe son of and the person of Ibrahim Traoré. But how will you also look at the border disputes coming from, of course, Yenga between Sierra Leone and that of Guinea to really harmonize some of these?
But this is part of our colonial legacies. You see, I mean, when you look at Yenga, you go Kwendu, you go Cambia. Look at what colonialism did to us. The same people, the same Kisi people, the same Susu people, the same Fula, Madingo people across the borders. These are things we settle harmoniously. We settle among ourselves, we talk about it, because what has happened is that we're still operating in this colonial mindset. When Ebola came, did it choose boundaries?
No,
it went from Guinea, came to Sierra Leone to Liberia. It followed all the relatives. Who moves from here and so. This is why we need to decolonize. We must decolonize our minds to understand Sierra Leone, Guinea, Liberia, Ivory Coast, all the way to Gambia, we are the same people. And when we operate as these blocks, to know we are the same people, allowing free movement of people moving around, economics of scale becomes possible. But when we operate within this small colonial mindset, we begin to be small-minded, and therefore movement of our people, the same people, is restricted. And so all this needs it, we all sit down. We meet, we discuss this out. There is nothing in it, it's just colonial legacies and stuff.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate your insights this morning, Professor Alhaji Njai, founder of Project 1808, and of course a member of the Pan-African Coalition for Sierra Leone. Thank you very much for being part of the program. We always appreciate your insights, being part of our program. We even don't want you to go, but you have to go. Thank you very much for being part of the program. All right. From there, I want to move into these tips where we'll be dealing with, of course, stomach flu and food poisoning. These two can cause cramping, vomiting, and diarrhea. But food poisoning does not spread between people. It comes quicker, but leaves faster. Let's watch this very much educative video to learn more about food poisoning.
If someone tells you that your really bad cramps are normal, don't believe them. You could have endometriosis. Endometriosis happens when tissue similar to the lining of your uterus goes rogue and grows in places it doesn't belong, like on your ovaries, fallopian tubes, or intestine. And because so many people just live with the pain, it takes an average of 6 to 10 years for a person suffering from endometriosis to actually be diagnosed with the condition. That's a long time to wait for an explanation. Here are 5 warning signs or red flags that tell you something definitely not normal is going on. Number 1, intense period pain. Really bad cramps are a classic symptom of endometriosis. We're talking pain that makes you miss school or work, or pain that doesn't go away with birth control pills or anti-inflammatory medications like ibuprofen. Not all people with endometriosis have this much pain with their periods, and not all people with bad cramps have endometriosis. But really bad pain anytime is certainly something you should talk to your healthcare provider about. Number 2, chronic pelvic pain. If you have severe pain in your pelvis all the time, not just when you have your period, you may be experiencing the effects of inflammation and scarring caused by endometriosis that has been left untreated. The longer this cycle continues without treatment, the higher likelihood your pelvic floor muscles and nerves may also be negatively impacted. Number 3, painful sex. If having sex hurts, that could be a sign of endometriosis. Penetration can pull and stretch endometrial tissue that has grown behind the vagina or lower uterus. Endometriosis can also lead to pelvic floor spasm, which can worsen with vaginal penetration. Some people experience only a mild discomfort, while others experience a deeper, more intense ache during or after sex. Basically, if the pain outweighs the pleasure, something isn't right. Number 4, stomach problems. When endometriosis attaches to your bowel or causes kinking of your bowel from adhesions, it can wreak havoc with your digestive system, causing nausea, constipation, or diarrhea. It can also make you severely bloated, especially when that time of the month rolls around. Number 5, trouble getting pregnant. If you've been trying to get pregnant but aren't having any luck, endometriosis might be the culprit, and you're not alone. Up to 50% of women who experience infertility have endometriosis. Endometriosis causes inflammation and scarring in your pelvis. The scarring can also cause kinks in your fallopian tubes. This inflammation, scarring, and kinking make it much harder for the sperm and egg to meet up, or for an embryo to implant in your uterus. Endometriosis is a frustrating condition. Many people have symptoms, but some don't. Some people have mild pain. For others, the pain is unbearable. And for so many people, the road to diagnosis is an unnecessarily long one. If you're experiencing any red flags at all, it's important to see your healthcare provider right away. And remember, bad period pain isn't normal. Having regular appointments with your healthcare provider is key to staying on top of any potential problems.
Welcome back to the program you're watching. It's Good Morning Sierra Leone, reaching you live from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation Television on Channel 30 and most social media streaming platforms. Of course, we still have in the studio Dr. Mustafa Jallow. He's the operations lead for the Mpox response in the country. Dr. Jallow, just before we go for the break, of course, you have been telling us on your response mechanism. You know, building health infrastructure across the country, treatment center for certainty, is one of the many ways to respond and contain this particular disease. But as well, public awareness raising and sensitization plays a pivotal role. What other mechanism have you been employing?
Yeah, thank you very much. So, remember I said when we had the first case in the country, we set up what we call incident management system, in which we build pillars, structures across within the agency and outside the agency. The risk communication and community engagement is one of our main pillars for every response in this country. Okay. Since Ebola and COVID, so that structure interface with other ministries as well, local government, you know, Ministry of Information, councils, you know, and they have representation up to community level. So we've activated all these structures to ensure that we work together closely to respond to.
Just before letting you go, Dr. Jallow, as you scale up in your level 2 response to contain the virus, what are you looking for? What should Sierra Leoneans, I beg your pardon, should be looking forward to see?
So what we did was first to develop an incident action plan.
Okay.
In that incident action plan, we have a very clear strategy how we want to break the chain of transmission in the next 6 weeks. You know, so within the next 6 weeks, we want to see the transmission chain cut to a lowest level, and that cannot only be done with the agency alone, nor the Minister of Health alone. That is why we are a whole of society approach. That is why we say public health. It's not clinical health.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's Dr. Mustafa Jallow, of course, the operations lead for Mpox response in the Ministry of Health. Many thanks for being part of the program this morning. As we move to another issue, as the public may be aware, of course, members of staff of the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation nationwide issued a 21-day strike action calling on governments and relevant authorities to address their welfare in terms of better salary structure, medical risk, allowance, better working environment, and the board of trustees not seeking the welfare of the staff, among many other issues. Now, of course, as a board is a governing body that oversees the organization, ensuring its mission, policies, and financial well-being are upheld, and that the organization operates ethically and in compliance with legal requirements. The above defines a board of trustees, but what is obtained with the SLBC board of trustees? When it's due to delve more this issue, we've been joined by chairman of non-state actors on public funds and service delivery, and his Claude M. Sharif. Good morning, Mr. Sharif.
Good morning.
Very well. Of course, it's no gainsaying that there have been turbulent times here as a public service broadcaster, and of course, as members of non-state actors, that has been a public concern for you. You mind taking a leaf on this?
Thank you very much. The issue of staff welfare of SLBC is an old age problem. It's an old age issue, and for which we had engaged severally the relevant stakeholders. Now that is the top management of SLBC. And we all know that primarily the function of the Board of Trustees of SLBC is to oversee, to supervise, to provide guidance and support to the SLBC management to make sure the SLBC perform to the way we want to see the SLBC as compared to other radio stations.
Okay.
But for many years, as I earlier said, we have made several engagements especially when we deal with or we engage in the budget presentation and discussions almost on a daily basis. I have the budget document here for 2023 and 2024 for the SLBC, and most times it's the head of the entity and the general. They attend this budget discussions, and we tell them that it's not only about Freetown but across the country. The welfare of SLBC staff is deplorable. It's not conducive, it's not good for any other person. So therefore, we want you guys to work closely, the board or the board of trustees, and then the director general and team, to make sure, one, you make SLBC attractive, and then you look into the job welfare of the SLBC staff. Because when you look at the operations of SLBC, these are the two key important aspects. The corporation itself, the services to the nation in terms of gadgets and equipment, and then secondly, the staff. You agree with me that there will be no SLBC if there are no staff. That one is sure.
Very well. Speaking about that, of course, Mr. Sheriff, you and I are aware of the fact that in terms of human resource, SLBC pride itself to have one of the best in the country. You also spotted on our Morning Coffee program this morning, sister program on the radio, to be giving a barrage of evidence, of course, your interaction with previous management, and of course the board of trustees, and of course how you've been trying to put things in place to ensure the proper running of affairs there at the public service broadcaster. But this leads to the question that of course the act, the SLBC Act itself, has some very, very rigid provisions that really impede progress here at the SLBC, and of course not once that has come up for review, but several times. And what will you advise if that is something to really go by?
Thank you very much. The act is here with me, and for some of the board members I contacted, they were also referring me to the act.
Because that's where it seems to be going.
Yes, but you still have the act, and yes, we still have issues around staff welfare. These staff are for us, they are the key important people of the institution. Without SLBC technical and other staff, there is no SLBC. So to me, is the act does not favor certain people, certain staff. The act is also subject to review, but from what I learned, they have not even reviewed this act for the longest of time. So, do you wait until you review the act, or you sit and discuss with the staff of SLBC? I understand when the new DG took over, she went around the SLBC stations across the country, and the board, some board members also did the same. And I want to believe the same issues of staff welfare, the same problem, were top of the discussions during those engagements. Okay, so if we have these issues year in, year out, coming all the time, then my first pointer will be the board of trustees. Okay. Because the board of trustees, these trustees are appointed by the president to help him with the supervision and overall guidance and support to the corporation or the entity, at least for a good result.
Quickly, Mr. Sheriff, just before we move to another issue now for discussion in the program, are you also concerned that a lot of issues are happening here at the public service broadcaster, but much attention has not been put on the welfare of staff and even to the structural integrity of the public service broadcaster in the 21st century? It's nothing to write about across the country, and that's even a slap to our face as people of this nation. Are you also concerned?
I am very much concerned, especially when we talk about our own national radio broadcaster. But also again, it was around the focus, the interest, and then the overall interest of the board of trustees. Where is your interest as a board member, as board chairman? We've all been part of several other boards. You intervene. Your first challenge, or the challenges should be, the issues of concern should be the staff, your staff, because you have to bear the blame. If those staff, come out one day and say, we are going to strike, we are going to strike. I understand the minister came here the other day. Minister of Labour came here the other day to engage the staff, staff of SLBC.
Yes.
While we have the board of trustees, they should be stepping in to make sure they settle these issues.
As an intermediary.
Immediately before it gets to that point. Revenue generation should be the key. How is the board of trustees helping the administration? How are you helping the administration to raise more revenue, to make SLBC more attractive? So if you know your job, if you know your responsibility, and if you know you want to help the president, these are the areas of concern that you need to concentrate.
Continue to stay with us in the program, Mr. Akubot Sheriff. Of course, he is the chairman for non-state actors on public funds and service delivery. We are talking to us here about issues affecting the public service broadcaster, and of course, efforts are on the table to really hastily resolve the situation currently as it is. But we want to move now to another issue for discussion that has really been circulating in the public sphere, following the impasse between Koidu Limited, a subsidiary of Octave Group, and its workers, resulting in a massive dismissal of workers. This has raised eyebrows, and some Sierra Leoneans will not forget the whole issue of decades of human rights violation that have been perpetuated by mining companies. Well, mining in Sierra Leone is governed by the Mines and Minerals Development Act of 2022, which repealed and replaced the Mines and Minerals Act of 2009. Now, the Act introduces new provisions for exploration, mines and minerals development, sales and export for the socio-economic benefit of these people of Sierra Leone. The Act is one of the best, but what is lacking in the Act is to give opportunities to Sierra Leoneans or Sierra Leonean companies to own some of these mines. The people have seen recent revolutions in Guinea, in which the president has terminated over 50 mining licenses, while in Burkina Faso the president is coming up with pro-country policies for their mines. While in the studio we've been joined by a colleague journalist who is among many voices calling for Sierra Leoneans to be owners of some of these mining companies, and is in the person of the chairman of the Guild of Editors, Thomas Dixon.
Yeah.
Good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Very well. Part of your thoughts, do you consider this to be timely, calling for Sierra Leoneans to really, will be given the leeway to operate in the mining sector?
Yeah, I think it is very time. In fact, it is overdue.
Okay.
I believe that this situation was sparked by what happened between Koidu Holdings and its workers. For over 1,000 Sierra Leoneans to be fired just because they protested, and they protested not because they are asking for salary increment. They protested because they are asking for their contract agreements to be regularized. The actual agreement. Mark you, they signed an agreement with these workers in dollars. And when the dollar rate moves up, they should be paid the current rate.
Okay.
But they've not been paid their current rate for years. And they demanded that they should have water. They should have toilet facility for every human being, which is true. You should have it in your workplace. And they also demanding that they should have a union. which every company should allow. The industrial relation policy globally is telling you that workers should have a union through which they can voice their grievances. But that is not, those things are not happening.
But they can substantially do that through the Sierra Labour Congress.
Yeah, they can do it through the Labour Congress, but it is good for them to have their own union, just as you guys in the SNBC have your own union.
I think we lack one.
You should have done it through what you did the last time. You should have done it through the Labour Congress, but because you have an organization, that is what they want. They want an organization. You can have the organization and you can then work with Labour Congress. Also, most of these unions, they are part of Labour Congress. You know, so apart from that, we also saw a situation in which the management of Koidu Holdings refer to our ministers as useless. In as much as you have some ministers that are actually not useful to the country, they are only useful to their personal interest other than the interest of the country. But we saw that statement as a form of disrespect, not just to the ministers, not just to the presidency, but to Sierra Leoneans.
Is that not what you get when self-aggrandizement takes place?
It is what you get when people go in for brown envelopes rather than negotiate on behalf of the people of the country. That is what you get. But however, we are saying that somebody who is benefiting from our own resources should not refer to us as useless. And it is on that basis that we are calling on government. We are calling on Sierra Leoneans for us to have a national conversation on our resource governance. For us to have a national conversation on how we are going to get Sierra Leoneans being interested in the mining sector. How we are going, for example, look at Burkina Faso. They nationalized their gold. Mali nationalized their gold.
Cut down on exports.
It doesn't cut down on exports. When they nationalized their gold processing, the company said that they are not going to operate. Later they came back and negotiated with the government. This is because they want their resources to be owned by the people. Mark you, a few years back when we had African Minerals, when we had the Sierra Leonean there, we all saw the effect of mining in the economy. All of us saw it. Nobody, look at this, go to some of these companies. They rather give procurement for little things to foreign companies that they will give.
Sorry for continuing there. Again, a lot of people will say these sectors are governed by policies, and many times some of these policies have lacuna that does not really cover for the ordinary citizen. Like in our case here, the SLBC, enormous prize given to the board and not on so far the foot soldiers of the institution, the staff.
I will not discuss the SLBC, it's another subject of discussion. I just made reference to it when you talk about union. I think but I would rather tell you that yes, there are lacunas in some of our agreements. One of the loopholes in this thing is that we have a Mines and Mineral Development Act.
Okay.
Most times the agreement between the company and the government overshadows the Mines and Minerals Act. We also have the Local Content Agency Act, which is saying that where there are expertise in the country, you should not come with expertise and perform abroad. You go to some of these mining companies. I visited one of the mining companies. You won't imagine that the head of communication, director of communication and PR is a Chinese. What can that person communicate? Director of communication and PR is a Chinese.
The irony is he'll be communicating to local people.
Yes, he communicates to local people. And we have lots and lots of qualified Sierra Leonean local people. So if you have a Sierra Leonean company, you will see people benefit. You will see it in the economy. So what we are calling for, we are calling on government, we are calling on all Sierra Leoneans. Let us put politics aside and let us begin to have. We had one conversation on natural resources before, the Albert McLeod conversation. That document is there, it's very progressive.
We wish to go a bit into that, but towards this, let me already come back quickly to Mr. Shaif as we are rounding off the program. Mr. Shaif, of course, you've seen a lot of these issues coming up, and many of them, if not all of them, are hinging on service delivery. But how can you have effective service delivery when, of course, the workforce is incapacitated?
One, we need focus leaders or in charge who are appointed to make sure the first interest should be that entity, the growth of that entity, and not their own personal interest. Okay? We all know, you and I know the job of the SLBC. 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, the staff of SLBC, you guys are up for you to come to the studio, to different areas to make sure you execute your duties across Sierra Leone. Okay? And you guys, you people need to be motivated. Motivated is not about 100% salary increment. If you pay the man 400,000, 500,000, and you increase his salary by 50%, how much is that? I mean, you tell us. Are you taking us serious? Are you taking our own national broadcaster serious, the SLBC? Now we want SLBC to make more money, more revenue. Look at the studio now. You now see the facelift.
Certainly. From
the gate to right up to the studios. Even here, you now see the facelift.
The development is cost effective.
Yes, it's cost, of course it is. With this new general, okay, you need more money. I mean, you have people within or among the board of trustees. Some are technocrat. How do you write project? Because you will not ever receive 100% support from government budget, Ministry of Finance. It's not possible everywhere in the world. So what do you do to make sure you bring more innovations? What do you do to bring more ideas? How do you support us, the board of trustees? How do you support the management to make sure you survive, you give fair welfare of service to the SLBC staff?
Alright. So
how do you give facelift? How do you work with the DG to make sure you give a facelift, fair and safe facelift, so that SLBC will attract other people from elsewhere to do business?
In closing, Mr. Sheriff, a whole chunk of this issue seems to be a battle for supremacy. Rivalry.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
See the SLBC going
Thank you. I keep on calling on the board of trustees and the DG. And there's no way you, the chairman, board of trustees, occupy that or carry out the job of the DG. It's not possible. To me, the interest is the corporation. So the two, you come together, the corporation and then the administration, you look at how SLBC works better, how the welfare of the SLBC people can be.
Where do we go for now?
Look into. Okay, where do we go for now? You have given 21 days notice.
Yes.
We have to visit or talk to the board chairperson, the board, and then the labor minister, and then the minister of information, to make sure no one downplays this issue. Nobody, because as I said earlier, it is an old age problem. This is something we've discussed several engagement. You go through the document that I have now, the budget 5 years ago, we have these issues, still staff welfare, equipment.
Okay.
So if your staff welfare is not being catered for, how are you going to ask for 20 million salary monthly? You board of trustee or you chairman board of trustee are requesting for 30 billion as alleged. We still are investigating.
Alright, Mr. Sheriff, I'm afraid this is our issue and we pride ourselves to talk about our issue, but time is really not our friend. There's a luxury that is not in hand currently. Thomas Dixon, in closing, you are calling for, of course, you are from the chairman for non-state actors on service delivery, calling upon governments to really strengthen public service institutions. Where do you think you can also come in? You are journalists, but of course you are amplifying. Well, like you said this morning on Morning Coffee, the agenda.
Yeah, if I should talk on the SLBC as Guild of Editor Chairman, I would have to condemn the SLBC for beating one of our editors. So that's why I don't want to talk on it. I know you have genuine concern. I know the way you are being constrained by your work, and the government should put more effort.
Okay.
But I think again there should be some form of respect on both sides. And I also believe that we have to find a funding mechanism. SLBC is not a government entity. It's a public service corporation. So we have to find a funding mechanism for SLBC. I remember when we were doing the act in 2012, issues like they should put some amount of tax on appliances. When you are going to buy appliances for SLBC, it was rejected. The SLBC can only be independent when there is an independent fund, when the fund is coming from Sierra Leoneans. When they say a public service broadcaster, it means that it is owned by the public. That is why those people who are in the board, they are not just appointed by the president, they are representing institutions like SLAG, like the young people, like civil society and the engineering department. What I made to understand, there is a funding for the review of the act.
All right.
I think we will start from there.
Finally, Thomas Dixon, coming back to the issue, do you think that Sierra Leoneans have the capacity to really operate in the mining sector? In terms of funding,
Sierra Leoneans have the capacity. You don't need to have huge funds to go into mining. Some of these companies, some of these companies, they came with nothing. We know somebody who came here with nothing. Today he owns 2 private jets.
Okay.
So let us allow our Sierra Leonean brothers to go into the sector. Let us have a national conversation on how we can nationalize or get our Sierra Leonean people into the sector.
Thank you very much. It's Thomas Dixon, of course, colleague journalist, of course, and he's here to talk on, they are now moving conversations for Sierra Leoneans to nationalize the mining sector and for Sierra Leoneans really to take prominence in the mining sector. We also want to say thanks very much to our guest for being part of the program this morning. We also had Dr. Shaif, the operations leader on MPOX response. We had Claude Shaif, who is also the chairman for non-state actors on service leave in the country. We earlier on had Professor Alaji Injai on the program. This is where we go at the curtains into this edition of Good Morning Salon. But quickly, we want to remind you of our quotes for the day, which came from a Russian writer, Nikolai Gogol, and it says, "It's no use to blame the looking glass if your face is awry." I will leave you that for thought. Good Morning Salon returns tomorrow. Until then, I'm Dennis Fraser. Goodbye.
As a mother of the house, whenever I want to prepare palm soup, there's no need pounding palm fruit. All I need is Nkulenu's Ghana's original palm soup base. My soup is done, and its preparation, it is not difficult at all. Nkulenu palm soup base, it's easily done with no difficulties. Just take few ladles and your soup is done. And its flavor, it's amazing. This is Nkulenu's Ghana's original palm soup base. And this is Nkulenu's Ghana's original spiced palm soup base. Iron fruit and turkey berries are naturally added.
Also available brown gold natural cocoa powder, sunny gold brown sugar, neat fufu flour, shito, pisa, and moringa. All available at Nyami Ado Enterprise, 1 Lower Waterloo Street, Freetown.
Nkulenu palm soup base.
Ghanaian original taste.
we don't run away. We come for better. We people they want for see what we they do. We people they want for know what we they say. Oh, we let we sorrow.
This is Newsbrief Live on SLBC. I am Cecilia Ali Sise. As part of its long commitment to promoting education in the country, the United States Embassy in Sierra Leone has undertaken its first Education USA College Fair. The platform, which was created by the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, offered the opportunity to people who want to study in the United States to gain and acquire knowledge on how to navigate their way to acquire scholarship opportunities and other educational opportunities in America. The U.S. Ambassador to Sierra Leone, David Hunt, said the United States desired to welcome driven and ambitious Sierra Leonean students in their institutions, including the best and brightest. He encouraged students to pursue career in technology, healthcare, manufacturing, and finance. Deputy Minister of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, Emily Gogra, said the college fair would not only benefit pupils and students, but also would benefit teachers and even staff of the ministry. The founder and staff of the Fatima Homes, a children's homes located in Kwama village along the Waterloo-Mashakia Road, have voiced their frustration over some community youth who they describe as land grabbers. According to the caregivers, the situation has escalated to a point where the safety of the orphaned children residing in the home was under serious threats, prompting an urgent call for intervention from relevant authorities. Founder of the Fatima Homes, Edward Musa Anaki, said continued disturbances by individuals claiming ownership of the property have raised serious security concerns among the caregivers. The Fatima Homes occupy more than 5 acres of land and currently houses over 70 children rescued from the streets. In addition to orphaned children, Fatima Homes also accommodates caregivers, single parents, and slum victims who were relocated from Freetown. The community is yet to respond to the accusations. And finally, on News Brief, the Jagaban movement has supported victims affected by the devastating fire incident in the Claptown community of Aberdeen, Freetown. The organization gave a donation of 100,000 loans to assist those who lost their homes, properties, and businesses in the tragic event. A month ago, a devastating fire swept through the Clapton community, replacing over 50,000 households and over 50 households and leaving many residents homeless and in distress. The CEO and founder of Jagaban Foundation, Jagaban Movement, Muhammad Omadu Kamara, commonly known as Jagaban, expressed his deep sympathy for the victims during the donation ceremony. He said the 100,000 loans was a gesture of compassion for all that they have lost, noting that the support was purely humanitarian and was not tied to any political ambition. Beneficiaries expressed their gratitude, describing the support from the Jagaban movement as vital lifeline. They highlighted that they lost everything in the fire, including their homes, businesses, and savings. Well, that's the end of News Brief from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. Thanks for watching, and do continue to stay tuned to the public broadcaster, the SLBC. I am Cecilia Ali Sise. Keep watching the SLBC. Goodbye.
Discover Sierra Leone, a hidden gem of West Africa, where the radiance of life danced in harmony with the beauty of nature.
Feel the heartbeat of our culture in every beat of the drum, in every every step of the dance.
Experience the tranquility of our shores, where each sunrise brings new stories and endless possibilities.
Immerse yourself in the vibrant tapestry of our daily life, where every color tells a tale and every face a friend.
Come, be enchanted by the sights and sounds of Sierra Leone.
A place where your adventure awaits.
And memories are made.
We are the national broadcaster, and I am Sulaiman Baba Toure, a reporter and presenter at the SLBC. Your voice, my voice.
From the commercial department, I am Regina Bangura. You are watching SLBC. Your voice, my voice.
I am Jonathan Turner, a reporter for Silent Broadcasting Corporation, SLBC. As a reporter, I do stories on education, health, politics, and more. Stay glued with SLBC to watch my stories. Your voice, my voice.
Lucian Ganda, producer Weyus, and producer and presenter Christian Editions on TV. This is the SLBC.
I am William Wise, presenter Weyus and also reporter at the SLBC, and this is the SLBC.
I am Salma Tabak, television executive producer. I produce programs on both radio and television. I'm a news anchor, a presenter, an announcer on radio. I enjoy what I do because I serve a public service broadcaster. It's a pleasure to work with the SLBC. I am Tilikoma, head of news and current affairs unit, Silent Broadcasting Corporation. Our news hour now covers several segments. We have entertainment, business, weather, sports, ferry schedule, and human interest stories, not forgetting politics. We are doing all that to keep you people posted on what's happening all over the country. Thanks for being with us at SLBC. Keep blue. We are the best.
Do you know the TV show that brings to you the decision makers who determine and shape the country's policies and programs? Bottom Line is the show to watch.
Well, join Asmi Uba as it brings to the table movers and shakers of society and policymakers whose decisions have direct impact on your lives.
Bottom Line comes up every Thursday at 7 p.m. on SLBC TV, Channel 31 with Asmi Uba.
Bottom Line on SLBC TV, the program you can't afford to miss on SLBC TV Channel 31. Join me now.
The show that touches every aspect of society as we leave no stone unturned.
It's Bottom Line, only on SLBC TV.
The Sierra Leone Association of Journalists will go to the polls in June to elect new regional and national executives, bringing an end to the 2 terms of the Ahmed Said Nasrallah administration.
The outgoing president has been described as the luckiest leader of the association in recent times, as he registered many successes that some of his predecessors only dreamt of.
I am leaving behind a legacy of honest leadership, accountable leadership, transparent leadership, and inclusive growth, and a legacy of a SLAJ that is respected and open up to more partnership and also supporting national development.
While some describe him as the man who chooses negotiation over belligerence, others say he was in bed with the political class.
In the last 6 years, we've been working very hard together with other stakeholders and international partners, Media Reform Coordinating Group, the BBC Media Action, International Fund for Public Interest Media, and also the government of Sierra Leone to address the issue of media poverty in Sierra Leone. And we are grateful that I am leaving behind the legacy of the National Fund for Public Interest Media, which we have established.
What kind of SLAJ is he going to leave to the new leadership? Join us on Bottom Line this Thursday, live on SLBC, as the outgoing president of SLAJ shares his highs and lows.
Bottom Line, the show to watch.
From the tropical rainforests to the arid deserts, from majestic mountains to vast grasslands. The rains come and go as quickly as a breath, leaving behind a clear sky and parched earth. The African savanna, where the sky and land meet in an endless horizon. This is a land of harsh contrasts. Here, the yellowing wild grass stretches out like an old, worn-out carpet. But beneath the surface, life teems with unstoppable energy. Every day is a race for survival. Predators move silently, like a breeze passing through. Meanwhile, the prey must flee, fighting for every moment. The battle for survival here is as tough and relentless as a steel forge, and only the strongest species manage to endure and live on. Welcome to Wild Savannah, survival stories from the heart of Africa. As the first light touches the African savanna grasslands, the sky is painted with a brilliant orange hue. A new day begins, but peace is nowhere to be found. The cycle of survival spins on, as life and death clash, like light and shadow, constantly vying for dominance. In the tropical savanna, herds of wildebeest embark on their journey. Millions migrate like pilgrims, searching for precious water. Behind them, hungry lions lie in wait in the tall grass, as silent as soul hunters, awaiting the perfect moment. In the temperate savanna, zebras and wildebeests face other enemies: African wild dogs and leopards. The dry, brittle grasslands of the temperate savanna test their patience and endurance. Beneath the cool waters of the flooded savanna, crocodiles await their annual feast when the migrating wildebeest and zebra herds cross the swift rivers. Only 70% of zebras make it through this grueling journey. Every creature here, predator or prey, fights for survival, guided by instinct and a divine force at every moment. The savanna covers about 20% of Earth's land surface, stretching out as golden grasslands under the blazing sun. A savanna or prairie is a biome and mixed ecosystem, grasslands interspersed with widely spaced trees, allowing sunlight to penetrate and nurture the endless green grass below. It's a unique biome, where trees are spaced far enough apart to let light in, supporting lush undergrowth. The African savanna, one of the oldest and most abundant ecosystems on Earth, has witnessed nature's great transformations. Around 8 to 5 million years ago, dense forests started to retreat, and the dry climate began to dominate. The vast grasslands of the savanna emerged. This was the moment when animals had to make a choice: adapt or face extinction. Landscapes changed, ecosystems evolved, and from this, a new world was born, harsh yet brimming with life. The African savanna stretches out like a giant carpet, covering about 5 million square miles, accounting for 65% of the continent. This is the land of golden grasslands, spreading to the horizon, creating an expansive and untamed space. The rainy season comes and goes as quickly as a lightning flash, leaving behind an enduring dryness, like a never-ending test from the god. The African savanna ecosystem is home to over 8,000 plant species, from vast grasslands to forests of shrubs and large trees. These plants not only provide sustenance for countless creatures, but also help regulate the climate. The animals in the savanna are incredibly diverse as well. More than 1,500 species of mammals jostle for survival in the wild. From massive herbivores to apex predators, showcasing the strength and adaptability of nature. In the sky, over 2,000 species of birds soar, from predatory birds to migrating flocks. Additionally, wetlands like the Sud are home to 500 species of aquatic animals, along with 400 species of reptiles and amphibians, all contributing to a miraculous and balanced food chain meticulously arranged by the Creator. The tropical savanna of Africa is one of the most important ecological zones, noted for its biodiversity and unique flora and fauna. The tropical savanna, like the beating heart of Africa, stretches out under the vast sky. It covers about 50% of Africa's land area, spanning many countries such as Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia. This is where life moves to the rhythm of wet and dry seasons. At the heart of the tropical savanna ecosystem lies Serengeti. Spanning 12,000 square miles from Tanzania to Kenya, Serengeti is one of the most biologically diverse grasslands in the world. Here, over 70 species of large mammals, and more than 500 species of birds thrive, creating a vibrant tapestry of life amidst the endless green grasslands. The highlight of Serengeti is the annual Great Migration between Serengeti in Tanzania and Masai Mara in Kenya. The rainy season from November to May allows the grass to grow vigorously in Serengeti, creating ideal conditions for herbivores to flourish. However, when the dry season begins in June and lasts until October, the grasslands dry up and water sources become scarce. About 1.5 million wildebeest, around 250,000 zebras, and hundreds of thousands of Thomson's gazelles, Eudorcus thomsoni, and other herbivores set off on the largest migration on the planet. The journey, spanning over 1,800 miles, is not easy. The herds must cross dry grasslands and treacherous rivers. The rugged terrain and fierce rivers create a dramatic and awe-inspiring scene where survival and peril intertwine at every moment. Like a journey to a promised land, these animals must endure hardships to find new grounds where life is more abundant. But in the face of difficulty, the herds keep moving forward. The fresh grass of Masai Mara is like a promise of renewal. The herbivores drive the regeneration of vegetation, while predators maintain the balance of the wildlife populations. This is one of the most extraordinary natural phenomena in Africa and the world, forming an essential biological cycle for the survival of the savanna ecosystem. In this biological cycle, the wildebeest, zebra, and other herbivores provide a bountiful food source for 3,000 to 3,500 lions in the Serengeti. According to the Wildlife Conservation Society, approximately 6,000 wildebeest and thousands of zebras fall prey to lion prides each year. This helps regulate the herbivore populations, maintaining a perfect balance within the ecosystem. Lions, scientifically named Panthera leo, are the second largest big cat after the Siberian tiger and are Africa's most powerful predators. Despite being known as the king of the savannah, these apex predators do not rely on individual strength alone. They hunt in groups, coordinating like a perfectly programmed machine. A lion pride typically consists of 10 to 15 members. The lionesses, with their agility and tactical minds, are the primary hunters. They patiently select and ambush large prey like wildebeest or zebras, particularly targeting young, old, or weakened individuals. A group of lionesses surrounds the prey, cutting off escape routes, and bring down their large prey with combined strength. Meanwhile, the males, with their impressive manes and roars that can be heard up to 5 miles away, use their superior strength to protect the pride. Their role is to fend off other male lions and hungry hyena packs that constantly compete for food. The lion's age-old rival is the spotted hyena, scientifically named Crocuta crocuta. Although often thought of as scavengers, 60% to 75% of their food comes from hunts they carry out themselves. Spotted hyenas are highly social predators, usually operating in large packs. A single pack can include up to 80 individuals, with a matriarchal social structure where females dominate. This creates a coordinated and strategic hunting formation, enabling them to easily overwhelm larger prey. During the Serengeti migration, hyena packs take advantage of the wildebeest herds crossing the Mara River to hunt weak or exhausted animals. According to a 2024 report from Serengeti National Park, approximately 25% of wildebeest fatalities during migration are due to hyenas and other predator attacks. However, the true strength of the hyenas lies in their powerful jaws, which are the strongest among mammals. Their bite force reaches up to 1,100 pounds per square inch, nearly double the bite force of a male lion, which averages around 650 pounds per square inch. Spotted hyenas are not only formidable hunters, but also play a crucial role in keeping the environment clean. They consume carcasses before they can pollute the ecosystem, helping prevent disease and maintain natural balance. The vast grasslands of the Serengeti are also the stage for the cheetah, which races across it like a golden bolt of lightning. Cheetahs, scientifically named Acinonyx jubatus, are known as the fastest land animals, capable of reaching speeds of up to 58 miles per hour. This speed enables them to pursue their favorite prey, Thompson's antelope, one of the most common species of antelope in the Serengeti. Cheetahs typically hunt during the day to avoid competition with nocturnal predators like lions and hyenas. They rely on their sharp eyesight to track prey from a distance and wait for the right moment to strike. The hunt begins with stalking, usually hiding in the tall savanna grass to approach prey quietly. Once within 100 to 130 feet of the target, the cheetah accelerates rapidly to catch up with its prey. With a lightweight, muscular build and long legs, cheetahs can unleash powerful bursts of speed, using their long tails to maintain balance as they race across the uneven savanna terrain. But speed alone is not enough. Since running consumes a great deal of energy, cheetahs can only maintain their top speed for about 20 to 30 seconds, requiring them to be extremely precise in choosing the right time to pursue their prey. Even after a dizzying chase, cheetahs often face a harsh reality: weak endurance. Even when they bring down prey, they risk losing their meal to stronger scavengers. There are only about 200 cheetahs in the Serengeti, according to the latest 2023 report from the IUCN. The cheetah's survival journey here is a race, not only against its prey, but also against time and fierce competition from other predators. In the wild world of the Serengeti, it's not just the large mammals that thrive. Life in the skies is equally vibrant. Over 500 bird species reside here, each playing a unique role in this vast ecosystem. One of the most impressive figures in the sky is the marabou stork. This large wading bird, scientifically known as Leptoptylos cruminiferus, belongs to the stork family, Ciconidae. With a wingspan of up to 10 feet, they have the largest wingspan of any land bird. They are sometimes called the Undertaker bird because when viewed from behind, their wings and back resemble a cloak and their thin white legs look like skeletal limbs. This nickname also reflects their role: nature's cleanup crew. Their habitat includes swamps, grasslands, and areas where lions and hyenas hunt. These dumping grounds are ideal for marabou storks to wander around the carcasses left behind by lions and hyenas, using their powerful beaks to consume the leftovers, helping prevent the spread of disease. But Serengeti is just one small part of the broader picture of the tropical savanna. In the vast tapestry of the tropical savanna, the central Zambesian Miombo woodlands is one of the largest and most diverse savanna ecosystems in Central and Southern Africa. This region stretches across Zambia, Zimbabwe, Angola, and Mozambique, and is home to towering trees like Brachystegia and Julbernardia. These ancient trees are like pillars of the heavens, raising life high and sheltering thousands of wild species below. They maintain the ecosystem by absorbing carbon and mitigating climate change, balancing life and the environment. The shrubs and grasses here thrive as well, adapted to harsh climates, long dry seasons, and irregular rainfall. The animals in this region have also evolved to withstand the harsh environmental conditions, helping maintain the delicate balance of the vast savanna ecosystem. Here, the African bush elephant reigns as the gentle giant over the vast grasslands and dense forests of the central Zambesian Miombo woodlands. This elephant species, scientifically named Loxodonta africana, is known as the largest land animal still in existence. The largest recorded individual stood 13 feet tall and weighed up to 22,900 pounds, 10.4 metric tons. Not only does the African bush elephant impress with its size, but it also plays an essential role as the architect of the ecosystem. Each day, a single elephant consumes up to 330 pounds of vegetation and requires a large amount of water, forcing them to move continuously in search of food and water, especially during the harsh dry seasons. Their massive footsteps create ecological corridors, breaking through dense vegetation and allowing other species to access new areas. Despite their immense strength, the survival journey of the African bush elephant is fraught with challenges. Since 2021, the IUCN has listed them as endangered due to habitat destruction and poaching for their ivory. Fortunately, thanks to conservation efforts, the population of African bush elephants in the Miombo region has seen a slight increase. According to WWF, in 2023, about 50,000 elephants were recorded in Zambia and Zimbabwe, a positive sign for the future of this giant herbivore. The Miombo woodlands are also home to two prominent antelope species, the kudu and the sable antelope. In this land of scorching heat and severe droughts, these antelopes have developed incredible survival skills and play vital roles in maintaining the balance of the ecosystem in the woodlands and grasslands of the central Zambesian Miombo. The kudu, scientifically named Tragelaphus strepsiceros, is famous for its spiraled horns, which resemble regal crowns. They can stand as tall as 5 feet and weigh up to 595 pounds, moving gracefully through the dense canopy. They consume tough and old leaves, a type of food that few other species can digest, allowing them to thrive in environments where food and water are always scarce. Meanwhile, the sable antelope, scientifically named Hippotragus niger, cuts an elegant figure with its shiny black coat and long curved horns. Weighing up to 550 pounds, they live in herds, enduring the intense heat and dry conditions of Miombo. The sable antelope moves constantly in search of scarce food, helping maintain population stability, with approximately 75,000 individuals recorded in 2023. The grasslands and woodlands of the central Zambesian Miombo are also the domain of African wild dogs, scientifically known as Lycaon pictus. These animals are among the most efficient predators, boasting a hunting success rate of up to 80%, far surpassing larger predators like lions or hyenas. They are known as masters of coordinated hunting. Their hunts are not just races of speed, but tests of patience and strategy. A pack of African wild dogs usually consists of 10 to 20 individuals, sometimes up to 40. During a hunt, each member has a specific role, and they coordinate perfectly to exhaust and corner their prey. Thanks to their teamwork, they can take down animals much larger than themselves, like wildebeest, and occasionally even buffalo. However, the role of African wild dogs goes beyond just hunting. They play a crucial role in maintaining the ecological balance by controlling herbivore populations, which prevents overgrazing and helps preserve vegetation. Despite their remarkable hunting skills, their survival is not easy. Genetic isolation, poaching, and diseases transmitted from domestic animals are significant threats to this species. According to the IUCN, African wild dogs are currently at high risk of extinction, with only about 6,000 individuals left across Africa. In the Miombo region, there are only about 500 to 600 African wild dogs as of 2023, calling for stronger conservation efforts to secure the future of this incredible predator. Leaving behind the dry forests and wide grasslands of the central Zambesian Miombo, a new journey unfolds in West Africa. This is the Guinean forest-savanna mosaic. Here, forest vegetation and savanna intermingle, creating breathtaking blended landscapes. Stretching across Guinea, Sierra Leone, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Togo, the Guinean forest-savanna mosaic is one of the rare regions where two seemingly opposing ecosystems coexist. As the dry season arrives in the Guinean forest-savanna mosaic, the roan antelope, scientifically named Hippotragus equinus, embarks on a grueling survival journey. The roan antelope population in the Guinean forest-savanna mosaic is estimated to be around 8,000 individuals as of 2024. With their striking light brown coats and long curved horns, roan antelopes are a symbol of resilience. They roam continuously across the sparse forests and grasslands, like dots of light moving against a backdrop of golden earth. The adaptability of this antelope species is truly remarkable. They can consume a variety of grasses and shrubs, including plant types that many other animals cannot eat. This allows them to endure the harsh conditions of the dry season, when the land cracks and vegetation becomes scarce. Within the rainforests and grasslands of the Guinean forest-savanna mosaic, the leopard, scientifically named Panthera pardus, stands out as a key predator. With exceptional adaptability, the leopard makes use of both environments. They hide in the dense forest vegetation and also move freely across the open savanna to chase down prey. As an opportunistic predator, leopards have a diverse diet that includes antelopes, smaller gazelles, monkeys, and even birds. Their hunting skills become particularly formidable at night, when their excellent vision and silent approach turn them into elusive hunters. Leopards hunt by relying on patience and their ability to conceal themselves in tall grass or trees. Taking advantage of their distinct spotted coats, which help them blend into their surroundings, leopards often ambush prey in the dark or at dusk, when their targets are less vigilant. Once within striking distance, the leopard leaps at speeds of up to 35 miles per hour, using its powerful jaws to immobilize and take down its prey. The leopard's incredible climbing ability also allows them to ambush from above or drag their kill up into the trees, avoiding competition with other predators like lions and hyenas. However, the survival journey of the leopard in this region is becoming increasingly challenging. According to the 2023 Panthera report, the leopard population in the Guinean forest savanna mosaic is estimated to be only about 2,500 individuals due to habitat loss and poaching for their fur. As rainforests are cleared for timber and agricultural expansion, leopards are forced to migrate into the savanna in search of food, where they often become targets for hunters or come into conflict with humans. After leaving the transition zone between the forest and savanna of the Guinean forest savanna mosaic, we enter a new landscape, the Somali acacia comifera, bushlands and thickets. This region spans northeastern Kenya, southeastern Ethiopia, and much of Somalia, and is one of the harshest savanna ecosystems in Africa. This is an environment marked by irregular rainfall, prolonged dry spells, and average high temperatures ranging from 77 degrees Fahrenheit to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. The dry, thorny terrain, with its low-growing, spiny trees, creates a wild yet challenging natural scene. These lands are not just a habitat, but serve as a keeper of the rhythm for the entire ecosystem. Acacia and comifera trees, resilient to drought, stand tall as pillars of life, providing shade and valuable food sources for the animals. The creatures of this region have developed unique survival strategies to cope with the harsh environment. In this challenging region, Gravy's zebra rises as a symbol of resilience. Their scientific name is Equus gravyi. They are recognized as the rarest zebra species in the world, with only about 2,800 individuals remaining as of 2023, according to the Gravy's Zebra Trust. Gravy's zebra is also the largest of the 3 zebra species, standing up to 5 feet tall and weighing between 770 and 990 pounds. They are distinct from other zebras, with narrower black and white stripes and larger, rounder ears, which enhance their hearing and help regulate body temperature in the harsh climate. Gravy's zebras have developed an impressive ability to survive in this dry region. They can endure long periods without water, subsisting on dry grass and traveling to remote areas to find water. In an environment where resources are scarce, they move in small herds, traveling far to find water and food. In doing so, Gravy's zebra plays a critical role in the ecosystem by controlling wild grass growth and providing stability to the savanna's vegetation. In the wilds of the Somali acacia comifera bushlands, where the dry, thorny shrubs stretch out under the scorching sun, the bat-eared fox, scientifically named Otocion megalotis, thrives as a small yet resilient warrior. With its large ears resembling natural radar dishes, the bat-eared fox has evolved in extraordinary ways to adapt to the harsh environment. The ears not only serve as listening tools, but also as weapons in hunting, detecting the smallest movements underground, where termites and insects hide. At night, when the intense heat subsides, the fox begins its journey in search of prey. Termites, its primary food source, make up 80% of this fox's diet. Interestingly, according to a 2023 study, the ears of the bat-eared fox have evolved to be 10% larger than in previous generations, allowing it to hunt more efficiently even during prolonged droughts.
Lion Association of Journalists will go to the polls in June to elect new regional and national executives, bringing an end to the 2 terms of the Ahmed Said Nasrallah administration.
The outgoing president has been described as the luckiest leader of the association in recent times, as he registered many successes that some of his predecessors only dreamt of.
I am leaving behind a legacy of honest leadership, accountable leadership, transparent leadership, and inclusive growth, and a legacy of a SLAJ that is respected and open up to more partnership and also supporting national development.
While some describe him as the man who chooses negotiation over belligerents, others say he was in bed with the political class.
In the last 6 years, we've been working very hard together with other stakeholders and international partners, Media Reform Coordinating Group, the BBC Media Action, International Fund for Public Interest Media, and also the government of Sierra Leone to address the issue of media poverty in Sierra Leone. And we are grateful that I am leaving behind the legacy of the National Fund for Public Interest Media, which we have established.
What kind of SLAJ is he going to leave to the new leadership? Join us on Bottom Line this Thursday, live on SLBC, as the outgoing president of SLAJ shares his highs and lows.
Bottom Line, the show to watch.
Lesia awa SLBC TV hunga tesiaba nyamya Ibrahim Kumango adwe hubengama kepe ngujo koma be hunga veita yi musia hunangia we kutumawe na habele mufumala kuma ta aje United States Embassy nawe ina salon tugwa na tulukuhida ko galibu video duedo nawe ni college na USA college fair ko we salon de black ti tukuega tile bunde siaba kebebi yeah, now we hear Jagaba movement from Batesiapa. To go on to Pomanga, yeah, now we are moving. Go there at Tauji, Hondo, yeah. Yeah, go Buddha of Great Babiando, Crapton, ye heaving video salon table. When I go to cooking. Go we call Gar and they says, yeah, be a land for my duel. Yeah, now it's na United States Embassy, Saluva. To go on to look with a call Garlic, now we hala what to look. To go out to college. Mbatita da kumana we college fia ko we salon de blast to go to kwega sia betele bu de sia abu ola kuma dwe to ye mbateji hu ministry na we na basic and senior secondary school education mbatesi apa na we sia me to go ko ye po mi du ko we tabe ya salon de blast ati to ko ga rebu ko we sia be to go to kwega ni adu jaoba na we appear sia be telebu de sia ola kuma dwe to ye mbateji ku hunje na we USA ambassador na we na salonga de bihon ogulo na ta ogobo geti ya ye ku hunju ye ke USA ta tuguga na tuluko buwa jiaba na we salon de bla ati ko we sia be tugu tukwega na we kola supplement fi matwe na we appear to go gale ta bi agu ola kuma telebu de sia to aya melo ade ku hunju ye tiana tiane poma dia na we to ko ga we ko we sia be tugu to ko ga sia ni ko be technology ba bisia mo sentia ndisia ke be bi na bu hu ndisia na we de sia sia ye ko ga le ki abu la lo kuma duwe to ye hu ba te jigu hunji to go ministry na basic and senior secondary school education hu ba te sia ba eni goga Agulo na ta ago kwa gite ya yiku huju ye bomiji hin tita manyi lokuma ko we ji atina ko ga re siabu na we ta tubu tuku ega ye igeni le ke ji atina ko ga re bu ye bomiji ta ye ofuma ji ama na we hin ka mo siabu na we siabe bi tubu tuku ega tele bu hu di kesia obukola lokuma duwe to ye ko lu ahunji manuma ngwate ya na we na Fatimata home children ngwatesi aba na wetuna biande kwama vulem watalo masaka yepi wainama tutwa na abunya na we hende na se amanya uboto yogo ya tele gundi shiaba tele pero na yiku hunji ko lui doma handaba na we ji ata do mi se ata bude do mi se mata kwa ngai ya afasi mi ko we ye hende ji se ya tada lokuma to amilo de yiku hunju ye doma hande jita vi elima hi ati jita poteko akiri keke ye be yes ya tupo manga ata pi jama de na si ata etiti si ama na we tatu buna tati hima bate ko we si abe tele bu hande kesi ya abu la lukuma duwe ye humbati je na ba melo te pe ma ko we dia bi ma bla ati to ati gama na we atu si abe tele bu hande kesi ya abu la lukuma ye ku hundi gumu na we na ye humbati diva na we na Fatima home ngbatesi aba Edward Musa ogulo na ta ogogwa bitia yiku huju ye ngbateje na we hin tida ma hilo kuma dia te ma ado ma de chia ye tagude ye do mi chia ma na we sia ma tide ke ye do mi ta sia ma tuuli ye jita nganya ugwetu loko ya ye na va mi lo tutu yi ma ko we dia bi ma bla ati tugutulo ko ye de jima na we api opo ma yet ma tile hum de chia ba ye humbate jigu hungi na we Fatimata home children ngbatesia te amelo na tide ke siabe yi do mi na we hi kuwa eka lolu na we siamia tuwa yi do mi na ta guta pomaga yi dige siama tijika gubo be anu free bogo mahumpu na we ko we siabe tile bun de kesia ogola lukuma yi dige sia ta gwa titi siama ta ati kebe vi hebi sia lega na we jabude sia abwatuma yinu gesi alega butumata bwa bidu chalo tebu tati hima bate mi ko wi siabe tile bundi sia ugola kuma duwe to ye ko lu abuji jagaba movement mbate sia na tugwa na to pomaga ya na we manuma mbate tati pia na diam tuna Crackton ye hebina abadi bidu salote bu na we ko bubude ta agwetima tugulo na tuna bove na we na buna jika bu obe ataji hodo ya ko we si abe bi tele bu ndi chesia abukola lukuma ye be ye si abe gaulega na we ndeji obraditi manko budeji Crackton ye hebi na sia ye pe sia la na we jika bu obe anufle bo ko ma pu na we yinu ge sia hima iatia tele bu ndi chesia ayama ye nava melo ogua akomeji yatima ko we sia be tele bundi kesia abukola kuma do to ye ngbateji gumunji CEO na we tamia ye gumu agie jagaba movement ngbatesi aba Mohammed Omolu Kamara na we tagulwe te jagaba agulo na ta ogogwa mitia ye kuhuju ye bomeji epema jiama na we hinga ya tiyama ko we sia be bi tele bundi kesia abukola kuma ye ye watina bude ogletuma ye handa mutuga na we tima hakaga kini tulosi lola ye nava miolo ye pomiji matuma ko we sia betule bu ya sia agola kuma ye pomiji epima tuma ye epima na we hi politics ba kuma ye epima lo ko we sia be tele bu ndi sia agola kuma duwe to na we hi ti na fa ye sia ma duwe tugulo na tisia gwa jakaba movement mbati sia ma na we hi nda botuga ko budeji ogbati matile bundi sia aya ma uma fe inde sia na bundi sia pe aya miroma kenava miro tugwa tupo migita tipia tuma sia ba tugu hunego inde ye ya na we tele bundi sia alama kuma budesi ajinya habele gufu la uma abwa SABC TV ba anasia na mugwe manene ngwa pema na ha vita yi musi ale ga ma ga wone mo ta aji United States Embassy na we na salumba tugwa na tulu ko higa ko gale na we hala watu no college na afia ko we digina siatima college na we siabe sibu to ko la tele bundi siaba jawuma kebe bi Jagaba movement from Patricia now with Mamma Adie, a Gulona Anna Bove, Yena, Jika Bubobe, Atali Hondo Ye, Giago Budi, a great man, Miado Crapton, Bido Sarotigo, Poetry Bundi, Jessia, Bula Guma. But he said, Jimmy have very full Lauma, Obama SLBC TV, Batisiaba, Nyamia Ibrahim Kumangu, and Venga, the Amolo.
Ik ben stem ka kuri mona fama yi no le nsolo sim ka tu SLBC television yi mine Isa Mahmoud Busne kontin to non ka alkamisa ango fu fen ka ba ko mri ka ba mari maran akren sen ka ba chen sama afan no tikan so kera pemo o United States Embassy ka anto fasoi po karanga do America ba chelai US College Fair oa Anja Kaban movement, puis moi un peu connaître Badra Kalai, en Kalafui, Yoni et Wool, Kemekin, quand Afma Soto, Anats, et Shitting at Buffet, Kado Crack Tommy, Kano Camp, puis moi Tabu Tracker, Tete, Yimina Isa Mamus in a container, Commander Sony Kamatare or Big Dog Era. Apapina ni Salata, Antofado America, upon the Pune Shannon, it's the pants, Marakaranka Sweeney. United States Embassy can't offer so you more poker, Machako can't offer Matilaka, America, Mapai, US College Fair. Or Martin Gamoneni, or Minister, or Imclan Konga, Kakaran, Kabutia Karacho, Mapaluputo, and basic and senior secondary school. Pimokono, Timokan, Kototuma Pantania, to Kara Ampoania. The Aunt of Nado America, the Embassy. Oba Sedoknani, call for Copa Okono, out of Rado America, and Passne, affect understanding out of Fashion, which Pone Karanika out of Rado America. A Gaffmani, a Baka Karanka, Pitikati, now you can about 10 cents Suni, the Bible Sotori, a Karankamar, a Karankamari, a Maraga Karan, a Marakaran Maporuputo scholarship. Amability Nitatina, why e poiai e tololo mi magulite stensi to konne karanga atofando America. O US Embassy ka atofasu de vilonza ni nakatel makongi doko kubika pani atofando America e ang pasne affect akarani muruka atofasu ni kabiti ani atimpi wa ni ba da military kapani na e matsaka karanga sistemi ni lolin shini afmani kapani mangkweni o imakama kali ka angko ngai kami pamali angko ang pafaro puta pa technology healthcare ka angko nga afmai maram re o ali angin be pampai stong ya to ka ang papangangkala o ekonomi yomo nisna ngai mambari ka kalemi na tsikarani o efa minister mklani angko nga ka kana buche ka bondi komani Emily Okra ni ka telma koni kopa o ka kana ta kara kima pati US College Fair. Ok, Bible muna fai ankarande na buso. Ok, ankar moko wali afun animo ke kara government maklene akonga ikakarani. Anu ki tebam tara government e matela Fatima Homes. Pimo anu nkenyengi ayi molo mai duama kapeska duama i molo mai aruna roa talo kokone lumsheka dai asiti ya. Pimo ngani apu fupani sarata afu ngi ka kalan kengi ma konekati antof ngani apu tsakanai apana na bareni kitsangane ka afu ngi deni amati no barne ade ngani anene ka pai afeta chibaka si aku bosko de royeni abai ni misne e mal misne ngani am temlomi ame achi ma tengi tamanti life afu bana kama diri kama ali botu mtai kama tai momko napoi wa wetu mate ninge anike matela Fatima Homes ni Edward Musa anakwani kaka telma koni kopa oka sompa masompa afeta ni skapana na roba antofania poani ni o mapantma ni pimbe sompa na wangai mapantma ya chibak bendi Fatima Homes pimo mwani kakpatikati ka munda kati molome eka tamat ya soto moe o ai moe ni amba feti ani makarande afeta nyaura na ikurika etsketiano camp mola ma feti to batching ya fet to fats dabo talenga ta so ba feti ani ti ba kala ya kasani ni an komra lomi ta biti bo ma epi kono ni oba usra ba feta bati af mania ura ka de no tan sano camp be ma pa slums wa iya ni sto ma keta ma sito ni ma pa slums victims ngambe pimo alomo ngati apo ika de loye kena afum ane ga ko nkala ke harmony atakara ni ayabi nini anye ngang ma yabi chori sarata ma pate pa ngani ayoma ayoema Anchagaban movement pimo po mari afmangi pilong ya asotoy maketa man nansi loy anansi ko to eshitinga kaido crap chom kado abadin kano camp repeats wa anin kenya ni pimo kila kalai molomai elion ewul kemekin ka ankalafu akama kone maraf mani anipi apote shitinga atentena wa kalai mama pat maka wa yikatila ni libe ya pupul maleya wa bati apote ngai amba somira amba sosi ngai mo ni apote ngate ngaketa ni ngalupane o CEO oweka anikini masala Jakaban movement moi Mohamed Omodu Kamara afma patatila ko Jakaban kono ni kono kochone mnoshine ka afma iso to maketa mieni kan anlo ko mokira tan kom tan kala ko ba jonani oi ankala ni enyo emino kemekine o otkenye sepai kono ni obari danen apanga de local mama pa politics o yo misata manno shi mara uni repeti to otakangala ye teni okola mangi san yino shi ne gamata pai maketa na so pai na so baf na him santo ne pai pomone na tati afuma ni so to amuna fani kurika Anchagaban movement ni nani dal kurikoli ka tok stock sani pa Jakabana yen dinga dan so tsepane ni a kokobe mana sendiri ana putoi se atentena ekalanga ema pat makawa iketilani macam batibe aku tuksma di nan sanse ke pai a aftam sanse ke pai afma nom so abati kanto fi ai basoni ye kama kone maranega afma ni kabe ponga kera tika sokana tabo ta kera wana States Embassy kanto fosweni primo pukaran papina karangando America machelai US College Fair o Anchagaban movement primo ko kira akalania kone balo ka afuma ni sotono mo nansi puto shitna ka do crap choni do abalen kano kyan mo lokalai indun emilon kemikini ni ota kan kalani pei o ni mai apanga do klima pa politics o kena no ntama no shima do repeat afam na to lo koloni akira kike ba cha no to no ka al kanisa o foka ba pe mri ba mri mar ka ka rin tsu ba tsin sama hanto lo koloni mine isa mamun musa kontra patoni anon fiaran
Alba olbe na siaba ken tsumban ko isi masiri manga da kasumi tanka SLBC ami gumba na bina isa masiri mala la kira ko tsumbi na ikete pe ta ko den ta de kai United Nations ambassador dumula ko ren ko ga salon de konko ba be ni ba matani mama kutine mala ko ren ko ga America ma be na college fair ba be ni ba matani ma na tema na me kai ga ko to Jagaban movement dun konko masiri ni demonte ba katra bitu ni to back and back na me ka uhen ku Capton community yani ba mai beni ba hena bin konda do ba masiri ma kuntema kana de ki ga kotso non ka kumase ka u motiti ba beni ba matani ma na me ka ya kotso ya kwen kumbani ka kwen ku ga America ambassador do nga kwen ku ga salon ese tema ko mama yomba katra beni ba matani ma na me ka ya kotso ka kwen ku ga America mali do mana college fair ba halu ba duna den ba matani makute na me kaya ko tsoga ko e kumbani kan ande dun ku no masir mama bani karne dite no batala meti den ba matani na basic and senior secondary school education matani na expectement do dun ku masir ku mamba kata ba bia bitimo ba kala tanu anonka ko e ku wa America ba ko matani makute imbani mu ha kabeni ba matani na meni mayo ba pati ukena kabeni bamba foma ba ko katona non na taba yubi de bam ba na bile pour écouter scholarship ba katra ba matani mana men kai ga kotsoi ka kwere ku America ambassador wa kwere ku yes aussi dunia kwere ku salon David Hunt de Kunkunon bon hambani ba kwere ku America ba mi matimu man ba yer sana moment do Canada ngai akwere ku salon bi gon kunku ba na yo siri ba tamatani ma kena me manon kamatani ma ngatema na me ni ma mandi ima mete ba kasamo matani mo mambani ga kotwe de du galela kukia ya ba sidon de won pumba yo siri kala ndin be mimba ba momo usa kuto iba kunkate ka be ba technology ka be ba peto kotona mo kaya kotwe no kusa kuto iba ina beni ba covering beni ma forma de tani ben ba halu matani mana men kaya kotwe kwelen kumba. So Minister of Matani Mao, basic and senior secondary school education, Matani Ma expectima emgago gadi kunkoi, ba katalaba Matani Ma na college fair, ba haluna men kaira kotso Matani Ma ngatema, kabi kutumuna mama ba katalaba karandeni bin, en karamo baby gon kusumuna ba bena, unsale de pewa le kaya kotso, akaramo be le kunkutamuna, men helemba walimbi ne kai, batale mbi ha one day non ka kwegen kumba. Ba katangeni ba matani ma kene me maka kotwe banda yola ba katamasi ma kotwe the probably the one founder and staff of the Fatima Homes ka semi la tabante non ba katraba participer ka tune yani ka uhen kwa mama village ka watalong kuma ba yime ba mama sheka ka tune yani ba mbamba pele dunku tanko pata kena memba non petemba mde kahe kama dungi ma kena memang kanom biabi dungi kan lebih ba kunkia non table ke gambu na kwe na ka tune yan ba ba patsbe ka madungi marke na mema kana bile ke ga kotso na non bia kotso la kwe nku iseti tere kwe ba patsbe de kunko non petemba bile kahe ka beni ba nyo ba ya we ga patio ke na mem kanom patsbi kai bihanda membe minanda mem ba haluna bile kunkine kanta kana dungi bile na panke bile yan ba ba bani akwete na ba mali ba kai bindega masima kena me diwan puko duna masega pada ba halu na de yo matete kabe bidonye ne bendi boy ma kwen ngambe ta non ba kalan biya kotsoi kata so wanta ta ba halu na de puko duni ma me ma yawo ba tia sarani ba bena den kitema wali mama banyo ga ko Fatima Homes enda kotsoi Elon Musa ana kwide kunkoi ba halu na de kaya kotsoi ba non petemba de kahe bana bisi dongi gane be babu so ngakwe ngambani ka patu ke potembe na ba mali ba kahinde ba non bi da koto bi pan at bebe mbambe Fatima Home ka kinde buite e ken bi sohi ka to ibne yan ba mbamba katra pam pat bi ga me kontra son kai bi bine set ya treating bi dintanda bi kai mi nanda me bi handa me bi dinti bine ende ba yan ba ba fo mara sende dunge yenda kotso bi ni tel ko ma patsi na bi gon len de te kali non kum sen bi kai bi hand patsi bi kai mi nanda me bi handa me be fo ma bi ki hele kene kali ti sana no ma wali na slums victim na be mbe ho ma bi dunge kene ga yan ba te bi ma na ho na bi gon tonton ba go me yawo ba katsa ma wali ma ba ni ga kotso e kabina bi dunge ne bi ta ko ti anon sara ni bambam ba halu na mle kuti umeteon ba katra ba yan ba bena panata le masirma pobre do ana jagaban movement de nkunku masira non bia bi tonito ni ba ke ba kename ka uhen ku ba Crafton community ka badin ka kenku lukari ka poha hamba ni de nkunku mase ka ulin kemonte ba halu bi panki yan ba kename ba tore ka uhen ku kombani de tonito non na hulba kena men bon ba kena men kabeni mama foma bile kutu masen ku mankan una ya kon hambani asenkeronto na danga dio kanombi tunito ba kena men ben ka wen ku Crafton community na huna kabiabi ya me yan ba ne ba kontra sohi tunito ba kena men si piola bile kai mi yan ga bele emasi manene na huna sio wa kon hambani wa ko jagaban movements obinera don Mohamed Omodu Kamara obinera tiyo na jagaban de team mamu non mase udun kunen ko banka bia mbi mambi tiyo non
Petemba no rapati o kena me makusa ni mabu mira na le dungu mase nkomban de di wele ga dunki anon dunku unte ba non bituni so para ba kena mama ben ba halu ba du no mase nkomba tu ma kinkini e ta oni ga mawalin ka be ba policy bondu na se ni na panke bile yan ba kena me abina bi kuse muna ma be de ti ma mo on hambani kuma se mwa yende wa po wa Jagaban movements ba halu kama wali mayo hoi ba kukatenga na no na se de panke yan ba kena me titsanda boni ba kena me bang non ko bi le ngani ka pati bi benna sema pina masirma ba helenga ti kombina pe ta kulenta le kai United Nations ambassador dunia kwelen ku ga salon de ku ba katara ba ni ba matani ma kwelen ku ga America ma bi na college fee ba ka matani ma ngate ma ka koto ku po bi na Jagaban movements de donc ku ma se wuli community ba katara banka ba to wende banka wo hen ku ga Crafton community tena pina masirma ko na do na inga bi na forma ya ami bibida handa dumbe kateneo
SLBC TV Freedom, Fambolona Monino, this na the use of Catherine Konobomica Yuna, the biggest force. United States Embassy inside Salondo, Old Landbook USA College Fair, and Jagaban movements don't give 100,000 to people them na Carton with fire being born decided intact. Now for the use of power with me, Catherine O'Connor. As you don't say, we don't they support book learning business inside the country. The United States Embassy inside Salona don't do the enforced education. United States of America College Fair. This idea also na the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Landbook Business I mean carry time for give chance to people them we want for study na the United States and for make them go know more. But waiting and waiting them go do we go help them for let them get scholarship and get chance for go do other kind land book and get chance for go inside America. The US ambassador to Salon David on say the United States their own idea now for make sure say Salon people that we want for land like students them make them go there inside the institution them and that's get for do with the best and bright one day. They don't be encourage students them for make them do things they will for do with technology, well body business, how they go they buy and sell and what thing them go do for make them go get for and for do couple business. Deputy Minister for Basic and Senior Secondary Education Millie Gogras say the college fair not only benefit school picking and no more but students and say so will benefit the teacher them and will command them in the ministry. Fatima Homes now one picking orphanage within Akwama village along Wataluma Sheka Highway in the possible fair with Wukman and non-talk say they're not glad for sake away some young people in the community go talk say na then get a land they outside this orphanage just so day according to the one day we they take care of the land this problem here so don't reach side way then get for try for safe them picking the yaso we talk now that host day because then they on that threat serious one and this don't make them they call urgent one for make the one the way responsible pay attention to them the authority then pay attention to them and solve this problem quick one. Fatima on the possible fenam na Edward Musa Anakwe it talks say in don't they get and they know they continue for the ambogam then young people they also they claim say now they get a property day and this don't make the security them way they take care of the place they call for concern for let people and go see how they go solve this problem for them quick one. The Fatima Homes don't take 5-acre land outside them build house them when over 70 picking them they inside that house they with them pull come out in the streets. Then the orphanage they also get people them where they take care of them, single parents them and people that we tap na side stuff where they not supposed for day. Now they all they inside free time where they care go now that home day for make their life will look better small. But as all this they be the community people then not able for talk nothing yet for know who that gets the land or not to the young people there get the land. And the Jagaban movement don't support people them we fire be above na Capton community na Badin inside Freetown. The organization being give 100,000 so for if they want them where they also been born then property and then business them. Now that's serious for a while a day. Inside 1 month we don't pass. The fire be work at hook up inside Capton community where they make over 50 people they host. Now I mean born as them people they also not go side water, and that's the worry them serious one. The CEO and founder for the Jagaban movement, Mohamed Omadou Kamara, people can call Jagaban, say in sorry and in feeling for them people they also during the same way if they give them this couple also for help them. They say this 100,000 way give them. Now sorry for them for everything and all lost. It talk say this support Yason and because of I feel for them and not get nothing to do with politics at all. They say the one them way been benefits from that couple day thank and say the support we them get from Jagaban movement it can the right time and it go help them and say we should talk about how they don't lost all thing at the fire together with the host and then business and couple way them been done the save. We found for Dundee Ismail Yuna the biggest one till more. United States Embassy in South Salundo All Education United States of America College Fair and Jagaban movement Dundee 100,000 million to people them na Capton community we fire been born the host. And the youth done to ignite Kasim Okono. Continue for the look SLBC and have a blessed day. Tata.
The Sierra Leone Association of Journalists will go to the polls in June to elect new regional and national executives, bringing an end to the 2 terms of the Ahmed Said Nasrallah administration.
The outgoing president has been described as the luckiest leader of the association in recent times, as he registered many successes that some of his predecessors only dreamt of.
I am leaving behind a legacy of honest leadership, accountable leadership, transparent leadership, and inclusive growth, and a legacy of a SLAJ that is respected and open up to more partnership and also supporting national development.
While some describe him as the man who chooses negotiation over belligerence, others say he was in bed with the political class.
In the last 6 years, we've been working very hard together with other stakeholders and international partners, Media Reform Coordinating Group, the BBC Media Action, the International Forum for Public Interest Media, and also the government of Sierra Leone to address the issue of media poverty in Sierra Leone. And we are grateful that I am leaving behind the legacy of the National Forum for Public Interest Media, which we have established.
What kind of SLAJ is he going to leave to the new leadership? Join us on Bottom Line this Thursday, live on SLBC, as the outgoing president of SLAJ shares his highs and lows.
Bottom Line, the show to watch.
Identified by their striped coat and strong forelegs, these hyenas can easily navigate the rugged, thorny terrain of the harsh landscape. Unlike the larger spotted hyena, the striped hyena is smaller but no less formidable. They are nocturnal,
emerging from their dens after dark and retreating back before dawn. Known as expert scavengers, striped hyenas not only clean up the environment, but also prevent the spread of disease by consuming decaying carcasses. The IUCN lists this species as near threatened, with the global population estimated at fewer than 10,000 mature individuals. The Somali Acacia commiphora bushlands, with their scattered shrubs and dry grass scorched under the blazing sun, are also home to the gerenuk.
This antelope, scientifically named Litocranius walleri, is also known as the giraffe gazelle due to its slender body and strikingly long neck. the gerenuk has a remarkable ability. It can stand on its hind legs to reach the leaves of trees as high as 6 to 8 feet, far above the reach of other herbivores. During extended droughts, when other animals must migrate or seek water far away, the gerenuk remains, thanks to its exceptional adaptations. They regulate their activity to conserve energy, minimize water loss, and maintain their body temperature efficiently. Additionally, the gerenuk can even adjust its metabolism to cope with extreme conditions. The savannas of the Somali Acacia commiphora region are also home to one of the most resilient antelope species, the East African oryx, scientifically named Oryx basa. With its striking white coat gleaming under the sun like a shield, and its long, straight horns rising like sharp swords, the oryx is always ready for any challenge. When the sun sets and the intense heat subsides, the oryx begins its quest for food. Nighttime is when they are most active, avoiding water loss through sweat and taking advantage of the cooler air. As the dry season intensifies and grasslands wither, they switch to feeding on drought-resistant shrubs like acacia and commiphora. Thanks to their strong digestive system, oryx can extract vital nutrients from the tough, dry vegetation. They can survive for weeks, sometimes even months, without drinking water. A 2023 study by UNEP found that oryx not only seek food, but also extract water from dried leaves, maximizing every resource the harsh environment provides. Oryx have an extraordinary ability to adjust their body temperature, allowing them to withstand extreme heat of up to 116 degrees Fahrenheit. This helps them reduce water loss, an invaluable trait in a land where water is scarce. But what makes the oryx formidable isn't just their heat tolerance. When threatened by large predators like lions and leopards, they fight with strength and determination. Their 33-inch long straight horns, sharp as swords, are ready to fend off any threat. On numerous occasions, oryx have not only escaped, but have also forced even powerful predators to retreat. Additionally, the Somali Acacia commiphora bushlands and thickets are home to important residents like the ostrich, Struthio camelus, and Somali ostrich, Struthio molybdophanes. The ostrich, with its massive frame, standing up to 9 feet tall and weighing 340 pounds, is the largest living bird and is often referred to as a living dinosaur. Ostriches have incredible resilience to the harsh heat of the Somali bushlands. They can regulate their body temperature to cope with the extreme heat, keeping cool despite the scorching sun. Their sparse, lightweight feathers act as a natural cooling system, allowing the ostrich to release heat quickly. A 2023 UNEP study revealed that ostriches can survive long periods without drinking water. Instead, they obtain moisture from the plants they consume, such as grass and leaves, which are rich in water, allowing them to endure the severe droughts of the region. Moreover, ostriches have a unique biological mechanism to minimize water loss through respiration and urination. During the hottest parts of the day, ostriches reduce their activity, spending most of their time resting in the shade. Though they cannot fly, ostriches are capable of running at speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, and they can maintain a steady pace of 34 miles per hour over long distances. However, if cornered, ostriches can defend themselves with powerful kicks. A single kick from an ostrich is strong enough to inflict serious injury, and they can even fend off large predators like lions or cheetahs with one swift strike, turning the tables on their attackers. Encircling Lake Victoria like a giant natural bracelet is the Victoria Basin Forest Savanna Mosaic. Lake Victoria, the largest freshwater lake in Africa, is often likened to a beating heart in the middle of the continent, sustaining millions of living creatures. Here, rainforests and savannas meet, like two rivers converging, creating a land of harmonious coexistence. With a tropical climate, this area experiences short rainy seasons and long dry seasons, causing the landscape to shift in tune with nature's rhythm. This is the home of the Rothschild's giraffe, scientifically named Giraffa camelopardalis rothschildi, the rarest giraffe subspecies in the world. As of 2024, the Rothschild's giraffe population numbers only about 800 individuals, according to the Giraffe Conservation Foundation. Their pale coats, with patterns that do not extend down to their legs, make them easily distinguishable. Standing up to 18.7 feet tall, Rothschild's giraffes are the tallest of all giraffe species. They also stand out due to the presence of 5 ossicones, horn-like structures, on their heads, a feature few other giraffes share. Rothschild's giraffes are not only symbols of majesty, but also play the role of gardeners in the savannah. Their primary food source consists of the leaves of acacia and commiphora trees, and by controlling the growth of vegetation, they help maintain ecological balance. Thanks to their feeding habits, the tree canopies are kept in check, allowing sunlight to penetrate and support the life of many other species below the trees. Their presence is like the heartbeat of the savanna ecosystem, keeping everything in a state of natural balance. But Rothschild's giraffes are not just ecologically significant, they are also important for sustainable ecotourism. According to WWF, ecotourism plays a vital role in the conservation of this species, providing income for local communities and supporting wildlife protection programs. Tourist trips to observe giraffes offer opportunities for humans to connect with nature, serving as a reminder that every living creature plays a critical role in conservation efforts. Across the vast grasslands of the Victoria Basin, Topi, scientifically known as Damaliscus lunatus gemella, strides with the strength of a warrior. With their reddish-brown coats and black markings on their elbows and faces, topis blend perfectly into the savanna, where the golden grass and dusty earth create a natural camouflage. With a muscular build and long legs, topis are known as one of the fastest antelopes on the savanna. Their ability to run at speeds of up to 43 miles per hour allows them to easily escape from formidable predators like lions and leopards. Topis exhibit migratory behavior, seeking lush grasslands and stable water sources near Lake Victoria during the long dry seasons. These antelopes live in herds of